have carried into this room up to tonight. So thank you so much for 2.5 decades of service, and may you enjoy the time to come so thoroughly.
Thank you.
Is this your lovely wife next to you?
Yes.
Thank you for putting up with him working for us for, for 25 years, too. And I'm sure there were a lot of late nights and emergencies here as you were, dealing with some of our difficult projects and maintenance issues. I really appreciate hearing the long list of the different things you've done in your time, because I wasn't here for that history. And it struck me that you worked on those apartments on Esplanade that are gone, and I'm sure that must be like one of the most difficult times of any city employees or councils, work and seeing that kind of devastation. So when Bob and I moved here, soon afterwards, we had some questions about drainage in our neighborhood and came to see you. And so just from that lens, from a resident coming in with questions and trying to understand, I really appreciate that you're really helpful too, and that you know your stuff, and really trying to explain that to all of us. So thank you for your years of service to our city, to our government, and to our residents. We'll miss you.
And I want to say thank you, too. I mean, when you start reading all these things and you just keep going and going and going, we know how much you did for the city, and we all appreciate you so much. And as I think Tiger said, the rest of the family here that appreciates you, too, and bothers to come out to a council meeting on Monday night is really special. So, okay, Lisa?
Thank you. So I just want to say that the proclamation doesn't even touch on all of the things that Ray has done for the city. The people he's touched, the projects he's done, every single, emergency that we had in this city, Ray was in there helping, always willing to jump in and do whatever he needed to do to help the city. Honestly, one of the most committed employees I've ever met. It's just really quite phenomenal. And, he was really the backbone of the engineering department. And I think, as you can tell just by all the people that are here, that have come to honor Ray, and these are, bosses, these are coworkers, these are people that he has mentored, these are people that he's just recently mentored. I mean, there's just a great love for Ray in engineering, and, we're gonna miss him. And so with that, I wanna give him something from the city and all of us to you. Pull it out. So a little, something that shows our appreciation of his 25 years of service to the city. And then we also have something that's a little more serious but beautiful. We also have something a little more fun that Michelle's gonna give you.
We can't see it.
So this is, for those of you who don't know, and maybe Ray, you can show the audience too. So for those of you who don't know, okay, this was when we recently had our, high tide, big wave again with our 45-foot waves. And there's Ray. That is actually on the Esplanade Plaza. Sitting there, he was able to find, I don't know if it was a rock or a bench or something, and with the water all around him. And just looking very, I don't know, like just sort of thoughtfully looking out like, oh, it's Pacifica. Here we are. Anyway, we just really appreciate you, Ray, and appreciate you, too. Thank you for all.
Just want to not prepare for this, but just on behalf of our family, kids, Duncan and his family, we're so honored and proud of Ray for working side by side, grow along with the city of Pacifica. He cannot be a better place to work for. So thank you for making us part of the family, and thank you for being such a wonderful husband and wonderful father. You grow with the city of the best city we moved. Here is the first city I've known to live in, California, actually. So thank you. And he still wake me up at the same time, so I'm starting to get annoyed. I'm like, honey, can I have you to myself now? Because he still wake up at the same time, 5 o'clock in the morning. I gotta, no, don't worry, you're not late for work now. You're not late. Enjoy.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite comments from the public, and then Ray will give you a chance to speak. But people from the public? Sam? I don't know. I haven't seen any.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members, Sam Bautista, former Deputy Director of Public Works here at the City of Pacifica. And I just want to wish Ray a great life in your retirement. Congratulations in making that milestone in your life. I can remember my first day here, and definitely Ray was the person to go to. He had the institutional knowledge. He knew everybody in town. So definitely, he was a great guy to work with, and I'll see him around. But congratulations, Ray.
Van?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. For the record, I'm Van Dominic Ocampo, a former Pacifica public servant. Council, if you're searching for the person to blame on how Pacifica ended up with the Raymond Dunguines, you don't have to look any further. I am the guilty one, and I take full responsibility for it. You see, Ray started his engineering career here in Pacifica. I made my first mistake by hiring him as engineering intern in 1996. He was in his final year, academic year at San Francisco State University, where he earned his bachelor's degree in civil engineering. I still remember the 2 projects that I first assigned him. One is to set up traffic counters, to update the traffic count maps for the city, and also to convert our old maps into AutoCAD, or the electronic version. After graduation, Ray moved back to Guam, where he was from. And then for about a year and a half, he was there until he applied for the position of Assistant Civil Engineer here in the city. That's when I made my second mistake. I hired him back. As the new Assistant Civil Engineer, one of his first projects was the repaving of Odstad Boulevard, and also the steep section of Manor Drive, where you have that 17% slope there. And you know what? Honestly, when I was reading when you were reading the proclamation, I can't help but get teary-eyed, because those are the projects that we worked together as a team. As Ray has always had the initiative to do better than what's being required of his assignment. He is a hard worker and a dedicated public servant. His work ethics were superb. And as you had mentioned, he's the go-to guy. Yes, he is my go-to guy at engineering. And he is usually the first responder every time there's an emergency or a calamity. I can always count on Ray. Much of his career successes may be attributed to these qualities that he possessed. Ray is not only a good engineer, he's a great one. I would like to congratulate Ray on his well-deserved retirement and thank him for his hard work, dedication, and above all, his support for me while I was his co-worker. And I certainly value our 27 years, more than 27 years of friendship. So congratulations, Ray. Mayor Sue,
Yeah.
if I may,
Yes.
another retiree of Public Works is Maria Suzuki. She's not receiving a proclamation because she does not meet the required minimum years of service. However, her hard work and dedication for more than 7 years as admin clerk here for field services is certainly well worth acknowledging. Maria is so loved not only by her coworkers, but also by the people that do business at the field services office. She always gives priority to the needs of Pacifica residents. She was very instrumental when we started the implementation of the Pacifica State Beach Parking Program, and she does an excellent job organizing the department's logistics every time there's an emergency, enabling us to handle even the most challenging ones with the very limited resources we have. I also want to take this opportunity to publicly thank Maria Suzuki for her more than 7 years of service to the city and also her support when we were working together. So I just want to say that. I just want to add that one. And I want to congratulate her on her well-deserved retirement.
Thank you.
yeah.
And thank you, Maria, for your service.
Thank you so much, Council. I really miss you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay, Ray, your turn.
Let's see. I have some notes. Good evening, Mayor Varelaus, Pro Tem, and City Council members. I just want to thank everybody who's come out tonight to celebrate my retirement and really appreciate them coming out. It has been a long 25-year journey. Like Van said, I started here as an intern, and as they say, the rest is history. I want to thank everybody here for the City of Pacifica, Council, all the City Hall, city managers, all the public work, all the other departments, City Hall, Planning, PBNR, Fire, PD. I want to thank everybody that I've come across with the city. They've always supported me and supported the Public Works in all our projects. I want to especially thank all my Public Works colleagues, past and present, and everybody that's here tonight. They made work in Public Works a lot happier and happier place to be. Thank you for your support and your dedication and commitment through all the challenging times here with the city and with all our projects. I want to thank my family. A few of them are watching from all over the world. I want to thank my two amazing kids. They inspire me to be great, and my grandson and my grandson to be. Lastly, I want to thank my amazing wife, Ole, who has been my life partner, love of my life, my best friend, and my biggest supporter. Thank you, everyone, and best wishes to all.
And Ray, if you want to come up to the front and we'll take the picture. I did. Okay, good. And I forgot to ask for public comments online, but there were none. So, thank you. What? Okay. Okay, we're going to move on, and we're going to the consent calendar. I don't know.
It's definitely being taped. I'm not sure if it's live on television right now. The Zoom is off.
Sorry, do we know if we're broadcasting or we're just taping? Online? Okay, thank you. Okay, we're moving on to the consent calendar. There are items 1 through 4 on consent. Are there any council members wishing to pull anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will open it for public comment. Are there any public comments on the consent agenda? And I have no cards from the public. Is there anyone online wishing to speak on the consent calendar?
There are no raised hands.
Thank you. So no one from the public, no one online. I'll bring it back to council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had a couple comments for item number 1, the ACFR. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to staff. You look at this document, it's a ridiculous amount of work that goes into it. Yulia's team, once again, thank you. And friendly reminder to everyone that I think the last 2 years in a row, we've had the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association and that's amazing. And so I'm tentatively looking forward to a 3rd year, but I have every confidence that, award in hand or not, this follows closely in the footsteps of what has been award-winning year after year. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for the work that went into this document. When I say ACFR, by the way, Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, and I did that without looking it up. And the other one was item number 2, the re-roof on the community center, and I just wanted to remind our colleagues, if not the community, that clears the way, I think, for the photovoltaics to be put under the roof that PCE has been helping us with, which I think, when all is said and done, basically costs us nothing, because I think that the savings on the power bill we're going to have is what ultimately pays that off. So I think that clears the way, and I look forward to when we have an update about when the project gets underway.
Any other comments?
Oh, I have a couple of questions.
Okay, go ahead.
I just have a couple of questions on the annual comprehensive financial report item 1 also, and also want to thank Yulia and Lucy and all the staff for the long hours and all the hard work, especially working with a new audit team too. So just a couple of quick questions. One, on page 129 of the packet, page 129, I was trying to understand the housing funds, and I know there's a housing in lieu fund with about $250,000 in it, but this one is just labeled housing, so I'm not sure if it's the same one, and it says it has a balance of $623,394, if I'm reading that right, and I just want to understand what that is, since it's not our new housing fund. I'm told.
Right. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for all the kind words. I know that my team worked really hard on putting this document together, so I really appreciate the acknowledgement of the work. And I'm looking at the page 129. So the 623,000 is listed as a restricted portion of the fund balance that is designated for ongoing obligations for redevelopment agency.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's
So that's,
It's
so that's old
restricted to pay off the
redevelopment
debt.
agency, okay, okay. So it's restricted, it's not something we can use for housing now, okay. And then, I don't know if you can easily point me out, I was trying to find what the total revenue was for transit occupancy taxes. You kindly gave me the breakdown between hotels and short-term rentals, as 52% for short-term rentals and 48% for hotels, but I couldn't easily find a total. If you can point me to that.
Just give me a second. And Lucy, I'm sure you're looking for this as well, right?
And if it's too difficult on the spot, you can get back to me.
The question?
The total short-term. The total TOT revenues. Yeah, the total TOT revenues. What page is it on? Well,
Do you have
we can find this information in the.
Okay, you can,
get back to
yeah,
you.
you can
So
get
we
back to me.
refer to the specific page of the actual report.
Do you have additional questions?
No, I just, and I want to just thank you for all the answers to my questions about our pension funds. That's all so complicated, and I appreciate
It
that
is very
time.
complicated, and
Yeah.
we will have more communication on this as we annually review our funding policy during the budget development process.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you so much for that, for everything and the comprehensiveness of this report.
Thank you so much, and
Thank
fingers
you.
crossed for the next award.
Thank you. And someone want to make a motion?
Sure, I'll move to adopt the consent agenda.
I'll second.
And please vote. Sorry. Okay.
And with the motion to approve the consent calendar made by Councilmember Big Stick and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer, the vote passes unanimously.
Okay, and that motion passes 5-0, as she said. And moving on, we're going into public comment. We have two people who have cards for public comment, and we have Caitlin Quinn first, followed by Anita Reese.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Nice to see you again. I know tonight is a big night for the housing element, and just as part of that, I want to keep banging the drum about the ongoing issue of short-term rentals in the city of Pacifica. It is an ongoing issue that I believe is closely connected to our view of housing, the critical housing issues in the city. I think if we're having a conversation about the need for housing, that we can't decouple these issues. For instance, I live in West Sharp Park. On my street, 6 blocks, I counted 23 homes. 12 of them are now full-time short-term rentals. That is 52% of the housing stock. That we could have neighbors, we could have actual people living in them. We don't. We just have a constant churn of tourists in and out every 2 to 3 days. I know that we are looking at creating a new SDR ordinance, a more robust one. I want to urge the city to please get on this quickly. Right now, we are getting something like a new SDR opened in our town like once a week. We are overrun with them. I know there's the 150 cap. We're well beyond that. There's the ones that the city has on record. If you go on any of the SDR sites, Verbo, Airbnb, you see that we are way, way beyond these. And I understand that many of these are not registered, and so the city is also not getting the benefit of the TOT tax. But the city is also, we're penalizing residents by having these homes taken off the market. And the people who want to live here and be a part of the community are not able to do it. All throughout San Mateo, cities have already cracked down and have set up restrictions on these SDRs, I sent a letter. San Bruno, San Mateo, Redwood City, Burlingame, Daly City, Half Moon Bay, South San Francisco, Millbrae, Atherton, Woodside, Colma, Brisbane. It goes on. We need to join these and do the right thing by our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anita, please, no clapping. Anita Reese, followed by Chris Redfield, and then Peter.
Thanks. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks so much for the time. Anita Reese with the Pacifica Resource Center. And I just wanted to share a few updates, because I haven't been here for a little while, to make comment. So we are continuing to be open Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, 9 to 5, Wednesdays, 9 to 7, and Friday, 9 to 1. We are also open one Saturday a month. We will be open this Saturday, January 27th, which is also the launch of our tax season. So if you need help preparing your taxes, our volunteer tax preparers are ready to assist. We have appointments available this Saturday still, and we have appointments that should be available on Monday, and moving forward, we'll have appointments Monday mornings, Wednesday evenings, and then one Saturday a month. You can contact our Economic Security and Volunteer Coordinator. Her name is Mirella. It's Mirella at M-I-R-E-L-L-A at pacresourcecenter.org. I also wanted to share for our holiday programs, we were able to help more families than ever this year for both our Thanksgiving program and our Holiday Joy program, with lots of thanks to the community who came out and provided additional gift cards and for Thanksgiving, as well as matched up with our families. So for Thanksgiving, we were able to serve 222 families with benefiting 612 individuals in Pacifica. And for Holiday Joy, we were able to support 238 children from 115 families, and that was 100% because of the community support that we have. For our Pacifica Safe Parking program, we continue to be full with 6 on the wait list, and we are in the process of starting an evaluation of the program. So in the next few months, I hope to be able to provide you some additional information, because we are at the halfway point of the program. We have also hired 2 additional outreach staff, so our homeless outreach staff is up to 5 folks. We have always had, well, not always, but since we hired our other 2, we had Saturday through Sunday, or Sunday through Saturday, covered with outreach hours, so that if anybody needed support, we could send somebody out. With these 3 additional staff that we've hired since November, we will be able to add evening hours as well, weekdays Monday through Thursday until 7:30, and then with some flexibility. So if you see anybody in the field or outside that needs support, please email us at ucoutreach@pacresourcecenter.org. I will provide phone numbers for all of the outreach staff once we have phone numbers for them. We have 2 who are dedicated in Pacifica, 2 who are dedicated south of Pacifica, and then 1 person who's in the office to provide support throughout the time. The One Day Homeless Scout is on Thursday. I have 6 seconds. So look forward to giving you more information after we do that Thursday. I'll be there at 4 a.m. Woohoo!
Thank you. Peter, followed by Chris Redfield. I switched the order.
I want to talk about the challenge of housing in the city, in particular how STRs impact that. 2 weeks ago, I came here and I talked about how I walk my dogs through the neighborhood at night, and on every block, on average, there's somebody living in a vehicle. And I mentioned in particular a middle-aged couple I saw a couple of years ago who lived in a sedan. The husband would sleep in a sleeping bag behind the driver's side steering wheel, and the wife in the passenger side. And I mentioned how when we moved to Pacifica, the house beside us had 2 different families, a single mom with 2 kids and a professional woman whose mother and boyfriend had come over. And that house has now become a STR, a hotel, unregulated hotel, let's just call it what it is. And that company owns 19 properties in Pacifica. Now, there are multiple root causes to the housing problem, like there are multiple root causes to your personal problems, your societal problems, government problems. In fact, most business problems and societal problems have multiple root causes, and that's why they're called overdetermined. And so what we usually do is we go after the low-lying fruit in business. This is what I do for a living, by the way, work with Fortune 100 companies on how to solve problems. Usually go after the low-lying fruit. If we think about the housing problem in the Bay Area, we live on a peninsula that's like your thumb, and we can't really reclaim the land like we did with the Marina District, decades ago. So can't solve the geographic problem. And there's a lot of money in the area of Silicon Valley, can't really solve the economic challenge. And we've got really great weather, so you can't really change that. I mean, there's no homeless problem in Antarctica. And you start looking at the different root causes for homelessness and home challenges in the Bay Area, and somewhere down at the bottom is the conversion of family homes and dwellings, the conversion of apartment buildings into full-time unhosted STRs. That's actually the low-lying fruit of the multiple root causes that are causing the housing challenge in the Bay Area, and in particular in Pacifica. It's really not that hard to overcome. And the vast proliferation of these things every month is exacerbating the problem because they create less housing for the people that want to live here, and that drives up the cost of houses and apartments. And so it makes the problem harder. And so when we look at overdetermined problems, one of the low-lying fruit root causes is the proliferation of STRs, and I entreat the city staff and the councilors to address that, because that's a win. That's a quick, easy win by baking that into your housing plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Chris? And that's the last card I have for public comment.
Good evening, staff and council. I'd like to report a theft from the people of Pacifica, and our visitors, the theft of opportunity to teach, acknowledge, and learn from history. It is sad that a state agency bureaucrat made a subjective decision possibly based on his or her own bias, but influenced by a biased petitioner. According to posted data, 4,800 signed online petitions. Based on a population of 38,500 people, that's 12.6%. Nowhere near even a simple majority. No proof to discern local objection, no answer to its disposition or fate. An arbitrary decision executed with little to no warning. It's surprising the theft wasn't done under the cover of darkness. It was argued that the depiction put forth a political stance. I would argue not until it was made into one. The opportunity to add, not subtract history at its location has been lost, eliminating, the education of thousands. In researching Alta California history, no accounts found the expedition atrocities directly afflicted by Portola. That is quite the opposite of the Padres in historical records. Should we now rename the baseball club the Padres? How about the 49ers? That's a revered, and attributable to untold murders, land thefts, and atrocities of thousands of Native Americans in search of monetary gain. That is documented fact. Yet we revere that aspect. Where does this stop? When do we seize the opportunity to teach, acknowledge, and learn history, not subtract from it? Thank you.
Thank you. And is there anyone online?
There is one raised hand. It is for Michael Vernaza.
Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Hello, Council. Are you allowed to, or can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking my comment. I know I only have 3 minutes. It's pretty interesting that the commenters here in the last few minutes, I feel like it's all part of the same problem or part of the same ability to create solutions. I, implore everyone out in this county even to pay attention in March and later this year. How do we get reports from our city and our county on the progress that actually is being made? Other places stop places or stop entities like Airbnb and VRBO because it directly impacts our community, and the comments that others have made about people that actually want to be here and not just to make money for a private equity firm or other larger institutions that generate funds, many times in other places where slave labor and child trafficking generates these revenues. How do I get these answers? I voted for Ray Mueller, and he had a great stump speech. And then another gentleman comes out, Mark Berman, both not from California, both just show up magically in the most expensive place you can possibly live in San Mateo County. I'm not voting for either of these people. And I don't think they really care what we have and what we're dealing with in this town. And I just need to figure out how we get reporting from the council here or from others in the county that maybe have a better pull from these folks. But it's clear that something needs to change, and I hope it does. Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any other raised hands?
There are no other raised hands.
Okay, so I'll bring it back to council for council communications.
Don't forget your microphone.
Thank you. I figure I'm loud and everyone can hear me. So Tiger has his hand raised.
No matter how loud you may be, the folks out there in television land may not quite get full effect. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to start by acknowledging that Jack Burgett with the North Coast County Water District, speaking of television land, is zooming in to watch this. So, hello, Jack. We look forward to when you can be here physically with us, and may you be on a path to healing. I usually say a thing about Ukraine and Israel. I think what it boils down to for me at this point is it is not good to see bullies affecting people's lives the way they have, no matter who that bully is and where they come from. Chris Redfield, thank you for reminding me about the Portola statue. Speaking for myself, the statue was not out of the ground before I had contacted Josh Becker's office and received response from multiple members of his team that they're going to be investigating this thoroughly and letting Caltrans know exactly how we feel. On Saturday, I had the opportunity to speak to Mark Berman in person, and I've also been in communication with Ray Mueller, who will be looking into, first of all, trying to track down where the thing is, because I don't know where it is, and I don't know that they told anyone when they gave us 36 hours notice that they were going to pull it. And also see if he can reach out to the San Mateo Historical Society to see if we can get it in the museum in Redwood City, if nowhere else. So we'll see who can dig up what, but the way Caltrans did this was not polite to our community, is what I will say in lieu of the expletives I'd rather lob. Past that, I wanted to touch back on what I was going to report out on from the reorgs I went to. I went to the Pacifica School District reorg, Millbrae, Brisbane, Half Moon Bay, Atherton, and Burlingame. I actually got a sneak peek at the animal control ordinance by visiting Atherton, so that was fun to see it before we did. At Burlingame, way more gaveling than I ever did. Michael Brownrigg, in point of fact, every time there was a public comment on anything, opened it with gavel and closed it with gavel.
He's so nice. It doesn't seem like
It was just an official, proper way to do it. They also agendized on their agendas upcoming events, which I thought was interesting. They have a policy that the mayor is the only one who responds to public comments that come in from email. It's just designated, so I'm not suggesting in any of these, by the way, we necessarily take it up. I'm just saying it's interesting to see the way others do it. Their housing element is in really good shape. It's interesting going to these towns and seeing that mostly people are kind of on par with us where we are with ours, but Burlingame was in good shape. And Donna Colson, the new mayor, was making efforts around community outreach such as regular office hours. And I thought the idea maybe when the winter settles down a little bit of trying to like once a month do a regular office hour, see if I can take Mayor Colson up on her challenge. This week I attended the San Mateo City Council meeting to see the other side of their reorg, in which Amarantz Lee, their former mayor, was well enough to give her departing speech, which was a good one. But also I was intrigued that they were discussing building codes in terms of electrifying existing construction. And I've been watching them closely because if and when they pass something, it may or may not be a model for us. At this point, I can report back that there's rigorous discourse and that they've decided on nothing yet. But it was interesting to see the menu of options that they've come up with so far. So if and when, I'll keep you all up to date. Attended the Water District last farewell to the Russ Conroy Memorial Conference Room as they're getting ready to say goodbye to the old building and rebuild the new. A lot with the Peninsula Division Legislative Action Committee of Cal Cities, getting various events up and running, and enjoying my time working with this regional body. Took a meeting with Debbie Ruddock, council member in Half Moon Bay, to talk about common issues. I attended the Pacifica Resource Center meeting as the liaison. They are in desperate need of more space, office space, as well as food space. So if anyone knows of good space available to help the Resource Center, please reach out. The good news is they're fully staffed, so yay. I attended the Don Horsley Memorial that happened the other week. It was really moving. It wasn't just high-ranking regional officials, it was also his family. And it was a beautiful moment to remember how much work this friend of ours has done. So once more, Don, we will miss you. And it was appropriately raining for that event. I attended a Lions Club meeting to ask them, as I said I would, to contribute to the Communities Overcoming Relationship Abuse, or CORA. The $10,000 for the service they're going to be providing, training businesses on how to look out for signs of domestic abuse and what to do if you see the signs. And other agencies, Rotary gave $1,000, Pacificans Care gave $1,000, Pacifica Resource Center gave $1,000 to contribute to this and really make it a community service. After I spoke to the Lions, they came back to me a few days later and said they were contributing $3,000 to it.
Wow.
Now this is after the stabbing that happened beginning of the year, and I think that that really moved them along with an opportunity to make sure that such things do not happen in our community again. So thank you, Lions. Thank you, Pacificans Care, Rotary, and Pacifica Resource Center. That means the city only needs to contribute $4,000 to this service, and I'm looking forward to seeing it firsthand when I'm sure city staff as well as various organizations along with the businesses have this training. I attended the LAFCO meeting, Broadmoor Police Protection District. There was a Belmont annexation. I attended the OSPAC meeting in which they were discussing the charter update. There's going to be a part 2 to that meeting, so nothing to report out on quite yet. There was also a good update about Maury Point. Speaking of charters, Mary and I met for the ad hoc earlier today. I think Kevin will be reporting out on who the next charter we're going to be reviewing will be, so I'll save that for now. And then, as I alluded to earlier, I attended the City Democrats Candidate Forum on Saturday. It was a candidate forum for State Assembly, so it was the former mayor of Palo Alto and Mark Berman, and it was a good discussion that was had. And the next Peninsula Clean Energy meeting is coming up this Thursday at 6:30. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. No lights are on.
I'll go ahead. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out, and thank you for your emails, your thoughtful emails. We really appreciate people who really take the time to make sure that we get all the information we need, because it's hard to get all the information, and so we really appreciate you. I'm looking right at you, Caitlin, because I mean that, so thank you so much. Okay, let's see. What did I do? I attended the Economic Development Committee meeting, which is a great meeting. I encourage members of the public to come out because this, in particular, committee is just full of energy, and they are doing a lot of really good work. And some of that is around Shop Pacifica. And Shop Pacifica is a really wonderful program that empowers people to go out to our small businesses. And it's been really successful. There's 56 businesses that are a part of Shop Pacifica now, so please go ahead and check it out. It's really great for gifts. I gave so many for Christmas. Yeah, so that's really great, and I think the Economic Development Committee is the exact body to be pushing that through. They're also looking at doing an event on the 27th of April, Brews and Blues, so keep your eye out for that. And they're looking to collaborate with the BID, which is our Business Improvement District. And so that'll be a nice collaboration, bringing folks together in that way. So I want to thank Tara, who's not here, I don't think, but she's doing a really great job, and Alyssa, who is the staff liaison for that committee. I attended the Age Friendly Coalition meeting. There's a survey on the City of Pacifica Senior Services site, so please check that out. You can also find it in some of the Connect with Pacifica issues that have come out, and it's a survey just for people to talk about how to make our committee. I'm going to back up on that one. How to make our city more age-friendly. I want to thank Lauren Smith, who is also part of our Economic Development Committee, and she is heading up our Pride Committee, and so I just wanted to give a little shout out to Lauren for taking the reins this month. I really appreciate her, and so there'll be more to come on our Pride celebration that will happen in June. I attended the North Coast County Water District meeting. A shout out to President Burgett. I really, he kept me involved in that meeting, and so that was really good.
Did you go in person or?
No, I didn't, but he made sure that that I was there. So Jack, yeah. Let's see, what else? We're having an event, so as part of the Art for a Peaceful and Just Community, which is a collaboration between the Sanchez Art Center and the Pacifica Collaborative, there's going to be a sing-along at the Mildred Owens Theater. It's called Leap into Kindness, and it's happening on Leap Day, February 29th, from 7 to 9 p.m. It's just a way for the community to come together in kindness and fun, and to sing. And so it's just a fun thing. So come on out. I want to thank Cindy Abbott at the Sanchez Art Center for bringing forward such a beautiful project. There's also a lot of different sectors of the community that are going to be participating in this. I had a friend of mine, say, well, I don't really understand this whole project. It seems kind of silly compared to all the things that are going on in the world. And my response was, but we just need to be kind where we can. And so every little bit counts. And this project is allowing us to do it in all different ways, through the school district, through the library, through the Beach Coalition, through our youth councils, and every little bit counts. Even if there's all these terrible things going on in the world, we can affect each other on a daily basis just by being kind to each other. I attended with Councilmember Bowles the Beach Boulevard Infrastructure Resiliency Project Community Outreach meeting, so we're working on the next meeting for that. And I really want to take a moment to thank the Pacifica Resource Center and Life Moves, which is an agency that oversees the shelter system in our county. There was a public commenter that talked about people sleeping in their cars, and anybody that you see out there sleeping in their cars, please just let them know that there are services available. It takes a really long time to get housed. And my family member, just this past week, we're getting her moved in. And it was a very hard decision for my family to make, to actually take that step to say, we need you to be a part of this program and let the resource center, give you case management and get you into the shelter. And almost 2 years it took. And I could not be more grateful. My sister's going to have a really lovely rest of her life. She's in a place where she's going to be able to stay. And please continue to support our core service agencies. They mean everything. And so, Anita, thank you.
Thank you. Christine?
Thank you, Mary. And I'll start with a little bit more on the same note. So I met with Anita and the Unhoused on the Coast Group 2, and one of the nice things the county has changed, there used to be a 90-day residency policy for people to live in the county before they could get services. And I don't know if it's just now because it's winter and rainy or if this is a long-term policy change, but in any case, right now, there's only a one-day notice. So the goal is really to get people into housing, and shelter right away from these elements, and it's available. So please do contact the Resource Center if you or anyone else have a need. There's also money coming from the county for encampments with more money for mental health and focus on rapid rehousing. And I believe, perhaps Kevin can confirm that I know we have applied for an encampment grant in Pacifica, and we did not get it the first time, but I believe we're applying again in the next month or two. We do have one of the greatest needs in the whole county with our number of homeless here. And I'm excited to do the homeless count this week. I've never done that before. Another plug for the PRC, the Pirates of Manor are having a fundraiser for the PRC at Winters on, where's my date? February 3rd at 4 o'clock. So there's a couple of bands, so there's live music, food, and a raffle. They're collecting things for the raffle now. And even though they're called the Pirates of Manor, they're very open to anybody. Pirate costumes are encouraged, but not required. So come join us and support the PRC. I want to thank the Pacific Beach Coalition for their MLK Day of Service, doing a Lindemar cleanup and planting, and want to highlight their big yearly fundraiser on February 9th, the surf movie. That also has a wonderful raffles and lots of prizes to give out. There's 2 different showings of the movie at 6 and 8:30. You can buy your tickets now. The movie is called Of Wind and Waves. It's the story of Woody Brown, who's an old California surfer, and I was researching, he invented the catamaran, which is pretty cool. Yeah. I met with the Emergency Preparedness Committee, and we had a presentation from Public Works. And if you saw the Connect with Pacifica newsletter, there was one of the things they talked about there was saving water. We always are told to save water during the summer, right, because of the drought, but you actually don't want to use much water during the winter, during really stormy days either, because it contributes to overwhelming our sewage system and our sewer plants. So save water when it's rainy out. And then at our next meeting of emergency preparedness on February 21st, we're actually meeting here because of other classes going on at the police station. We've agendized talking about beach safety after the tragic death of the little boy a couple weeks ago, and I know our committee is reaching out to PBNR also to see if there are some partnerships we can do around that. A few more details on the BBERT meeting. So that has been definitely scheduled for Thursday, February 22nd. It's going to be virtual, but possibly with a remote location for viewing, and the city will be sending postcards. So we really encourage everyone to come to that. So that's the last design meeting to review the consultant's proposals before going to environmental review. And then last Friday, I had a long day with the San Mateo County Leadership Council. The So every month we focus on a different issue, and it was on human services this time. So got to hear from some county leaders from several nonprofits, including Thrive, which I'd never heard of before. I can't believe it. And they're kind of an overall agency that gives support to nonprofits, that helps them with capacity building and fundraising and filling their boards, but they also work on climate issues and education issues. And they, if anyone's interested, they just issued their yearly report. And one of the things I found really fascinating was that they were analyzing the amount of services by region in the county. And I don't have the exact numbers in front of us, but we here on the northern side and on the coast have much less than other areas of the county in terms of, number of organizations doing work and people staffing them too. And we're here, and this meeting was in Half Moon Bay. And so we also got to visit nonprofits in Half Moon Bay. My group went to Coast House, which is our only transitional housing shelter on the coast from Pacifica down to Pescadero. So they have 51 units. Most of those are like a hotel room that can hold up to 2 people. There's a couple of family units. They're really not encouraging Pacifica families to go there. It's not really designed for families. It's right on the main road. They don't have a nice playground and so forth. But so there's a 30-person wait list, for that too, and it's just moving really slowly. So it's really just showing the need here on the coast. And then I'll talk to the city manager about this later, but I have no idea what to do with this information. But 2 of my cohorts who run nonprofits in the county have some job training opportunities that they want to bring to Pacifica. So one's for construction workers and one's for health workers, phlebotomists, things like that, if that's something we're interested in bringing. I think they're looking for short-term office space while they're doing the training. And then just one more thing I wanted to announce. This Thursday, the Pacifica's Environmental Family is hosting a talk about the Coastal Act and the formation of the Coastal Commission and their mission. So they've invited Dr. Charles Lester, who was the executive director of the Coastal Commission a few years ago, so giving us a good background in education as we start to tackle our coastal issues. So that's 7 to 9 at Mildred Owens Concert Hall, again this Thursday, and you can sign up on the Pacifica's Environmental Family website. Thank you. Sorry, that was a lot.
Sue?
Okay. I attended a number of the same events, so I won't go into very much specific on those. I did want to mention in terms of the Economic Development Committee that one of the subcommittees shared early work on a concept for a community-wide events calendar, which the concept of that they're thinking about is what's there to do in town in terms of arts, music, theater-type events, and putting it all in one place. So that's there'll be more to come on that. The night after that, which was the night after our last council meeting, I attended the Library Advisory Committee, which was our second meeting. The committee got right to work, amazing, and the council will be very excited to hear that our student, Sarah, her name's escaping me right now, the one who...
Maya Sinapuelas.
Maya. I thought it was Annabelle. Maya stepped up to be the secretary of the committee because one of the tasks they had was to select a chair and vice chair, so and a secretary. And so our chair is Tina Wermeister. Yay. Going forward. And so that was just exciting to see Maya get so engaged so quickly. We were fortunate to hear, the committee was fortunate to hear from and engage with Yvette from Berg Davis, who had done some work with the former LAC and separately in the past with the Library Advisory Committee, the Library Foundation, excuse me, on materials, social media, outreach, messaging, and that kind of thing. So they began work on that, formed subcommittees, and are digging in quickly. They also had an update from San Mateo County Library staff on the 24/7 kiosk that is presently being constructed at the Sanchez Library. And one thing I want to mention about that is that project, if you've driven by on Terra Nova Boulevard and you see this big construction fencing out there, that project is an enhancement to services at that library. It's not closing the library. In fact, the library remains open during construction, even though it looks like the door is blocked, it's not. And what that will be ultimately is a machine, like a big vending machine under a protected overhang that you can both browse, select materials by browsing, and they're working on a plan to be able to pick up materials as well. There's some size limitations, and sometimes people get 20 books, and there'll be some, you won't be able to put really big materials in there and things like that they're working out. But I just wanted to say that's exciting, and it's coming right up. It'd be, weather permitting, probably, I think, the April timeframe, but there'll be more information on that. And certainly it will be posted in Connect with Pacifica. The Coastal Commission Local Government Working Group met last Friday, the 12th, and we were discussing what the work plan will be for the year. The first item is to dig into Senate Bill 272, which was carried by Senator Laird and signed by the governor. And this is the bill that establishes the Coastal Commission and BCDC, the Bay Conservation Development Commission, sorry. I can't read my own writing. As the two entities in California that will be regulating and overseeing, we already know in Pacifica that we work with the Coastal Commission, but it was important for the legislature to establish the need, and the purpose of this bill is to establish the need for sea level rise adaptation plans in every jurisdiction by a date certain, which I think is 2034, but I'm not sure right now. But this year, both of those agencies are developing the guidance. They have a year to do it until December of this year. And so we wanted to have a chance to really dig into the specifics of the bill and understand how the working group, which is comprised of League of California Cities, California counties, and two coastal commissioners and coastal commission staff, to work together on looking at what the issues are for local jurisdictions, and then to learn what will be coming in terms of the guidance and helping to give input into that process. I also attended Don Horsley's memorial. It was very moving, as Tiger said. It was just, he was an amazing person. People who'd known him for 30 years or more talked about how at that day they learned more things about Don, and they thought they knew everything already. So it was truly a good day, even though it was raining. The Resource Management and Climate Protection Committee, which is a county CCAG committee, met on the 17th at 3 p.m. and getting over the hill to that meeting for 3 p.m. is always a bit of a push. There was an update on water conservation, on the status of our reservoirs, and there was discussion about, I forgot the state requirement, exactly the name of it, the regulation, but it specifically refers to fleets for organizations like cities and the requirement to convert a certain amount of our fleets to non-fossil fuel equipment. So we're talking about medium duty, not the heaviest duty pieces of equipment that we have, but what they were describing was medium duty, and they were describing services that are available through PCE with technical support to help cities, because the first reporting deadline on that program is in April this year. So what I brought the wrong notebook, so I don't have all the very specifics, but I do remember that it's 50% of anything purchased this year, I think, looking at Lisa. Anything that's purchased currently, 50% needs to be emission-free, and by 2027, 100% will need to be. So it's a very clear message from the state about climate goals and greenhouse gas reductions. Of course, what was discussed is the fact that those vehicles are more expensive and harder to come by. And so that presents a challenge for all the municipalities that are trying to fill in their fleets at the same time. So there's issues about that. The same day in the evening was the Pre-Hospital Emergency Services Joint Powers Agreement meeting, which is basically our ambulance services. And there was lots of presentations about response times, and even with last winter's rains and flooding and the more outlying areas, they were able to meet the targets almost 100% of the time, within the range that they're allowed. There were a few outlying areas where it was more difficult, but they do extra staging of equipment, specifically planning there may be an outage. And they've got equipment delivered to certain communities primarily down the coast is the areas they're talking about. But they did ask for us to go back and check in with our fire agencies about dispatch and a changeover that they're doing with a long process, many years in the process of changing over the lines to a digital only from a T1, wired kind of situation. So we'll check in about that, because we are, of course, one of the more outlying areas, and I want to make sure everything's good there. I'm sure it is, or we would have heard, but I will do what I was asked to do. The last item that I wanted to mention is the Pacifica Democrats. It was very well attended with the assembly candidates that were there. There will be a did you say this already? The congressional forum? No. Okay, thank you. Next month, and that will be the third Saturday of February the 17th, 9:30 a.m. sharp. I am the first one to say I was not sharply there, as Chris Redfield is nodding away right now, going, yeah, she was late. But the issue is about having Kevin Ramsey having an opportunity to rent the room in the back for the second, to have another event on the day that the Dems meet. So they want to keep it really tight. And this will be for candidates running for the House of Representatives, seat occupied by Congresswoman Anna Eshoo right now. So that should be interesting. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, I did a lot of things other people did. I went to the Don Horsley Memorial. I also went to the Democrats Forum. I went to the Water District closing. And I did meet with the FogFest board, and they are working to reduce their costs because they need to reduce costs for next year to continue FogFest. And that's really an important issue. And we all love the FogFest. I also met with Caitlin and Peter regarding STRs. And I talked to many people online and emails, and sometimes I read the emails and sometimes I don't respond. So I used to respond to everything. I don't do it every time now, just so you know. But I do read them all. I also am on the San Mateo County Emergency Services Council, and I'm always harping on the SMC alert, and they didn't tell us the percentages, but generally we have like 20% of people who opt into SMC alerts, and it's really important. We are getting a new system that is an opt-out system, thank goodness, because I keep asking them, why can't SMC alert be that way? But it's called Integrated Public Alert Warning, and it is used only for emergencies, emergency alerts, non-weather emergencies, and they will text. I've had them before. They not only text, they call your landlines, they call your cell phones and everything. Those are really important. The Zone Haven, which was recently purchased by a new company called Genesis. Our zones turn out to be the same, but Genesis is a much more elaborate program, and they're using artificial intelligence to be able to know, they know how many cars are in a zone, how many big trucks are in a zone, how to get people out the most efficient way possible. And that will be a much more elaborate program than it was in the past. And they have another one. There are several. I did.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
So with that new system, are there any plans to do an actual app? Because
there is an app for Genesis.
There is.
It's not spelled the same way as Genesis. It has a Y in it. And I'll tell you how to spell it in a moment.
Well, if you could just have city manager maybe send us a link so that we can check out that app, or even
Yes.
post it on Connect. Because I've been wanting an app associated with Zone Haven for years now.
I thought Zone Haven had an app, because I thought I had one.
It was online. It was an internet thing.
Okay. So they do have an app for Genesis, and you can get it on through your phone. But I have to spell it correctly because it's spelled with a Y, like I said. I did talk to them about beach safety. They asked us, we have a new director there, and they asked us about each of our issues. And in my mind on emergency issues was beach safety. And we even talked about posting the flags for warning based on tides and all the other problems that we have. And maybe if they had a red flag, maybe people would pay a little bit more attention. It's really hard. We have many, many signs.
We got email about that this week.
Okay.
Vicki,
Yeah.
about the colors.
So I did talk to them about the flags.
Good.
And, okay, that'll be it for me. So let's go on to staff communications.
City Manager, would you please, since I neglected to, give an update about the OPC sea level rise guidance release to the public? Or do you want me to? I mean, if you can include that. If not, I'll jump in when you're done.
Sure, I'm happy to defer that to you. You can do that right now if you want.
Okay. So we hear about and we all want to be basing policies and all of the plans that we make around sea level rise on the best available science. And there are many sources of scientific data. In California, something called the Ocean Protection Council is the agreed upon best available science, and they're charged with updating their sea level rise projections for California every 5 years. The last time it was done was 2018, and they were going to, their goal was to be done with and have it adopted by now, but there was a bit of a delay. So we just found out last week. We've been like, is it out yet? Is it out yet? And it was just released, I think Friday. And so if you are interested in going to their website, it's opc.ca.gov. It's the State of California Sea Level Rise Guidance 2024 Science and Policy Update. And it will be open for public comment until March 4th. So take a look. There's some very interesting updates. Very interesting. The biggest one that caught my attention was that they say a greater certainty and a narrowing range of the amount of sea rise through 2050, with a statewide average of 0.8 feet of rise projected in the next 30 years. And by 2021, statewide sea levels are expected to rise between 1.6 feet and 3.1 feet. There's a bunch of new terminology this time around. They call that the intermediate low to intermediate scenario. So there's a lot of terminology to get used to in looking at and seeing what they're basing their guidance on. Another piece that for planning purposes is very helpful for cities like us is the extreme sea level rise scenario, which was called H++. Has been determined that, well, it says best available science suggests the extreme sea level rise scenario is much higher than the best available science suggests, and it is not included in the 2024 update. That was the 10 feet of sea rise by 2100, sorry. So that, lots of very specific information. It takes a several pass-through read, but I really recommend. There's some great graphs in there.
Sorry, I'm going to go backwards and spell Genesis.
Oh, yeah.
It's GENASYS, protect, that's why I didn't remember. Maybe they could spell it easier way. GENASYS, protect, and it's an app. So, thanks. Sorry, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Kevin Woodhouse, City Manager. I have one main announcement. Councilmember Big Stick asked that I do mention about the Committee and Commission Charter Ad Hoc Committee, so I'll mention that. The committee met today and prioritized the sequence of upcoming committee and commission charter reviews as part of our ongoing major council priority for that. So the next committee for review will be the Economic Development Committee, followed by the Beautification Advisory Committee, followed by Emergency Preparedness and Safety Commission. And we'll be beginning that work now as we also wrap up the OSPAC charter review to bring that back to council. The other item I wanted to announce, which is very exciting, and that is that the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Department, under the leadership of Director Bob Palacio, has redone their logo and branding. And over the course of coming weeks, the public will see that new logo as the department plans on a rebranding campaign and an actual launch to that. But it's a very exciting logo, included input from the PB&R Commission and lots of staff and folks. And it really captures, in my opinion, I have a print here that's a little too small to show on camera, but it has the pier and it has folks on the beach and a surfer and a mountain biker and the beautiful scenery of Pacifica. So it's very exciting to sort of unify the logos in PB&R. There were multiple logos that were used previously for the different divisions, and now it'll be rebranded under this one. So I did want to announce that, and it's exciting.
There's somebody fishing off the pier in that logo, isn't there?
Yes, yes, the pier, that's right. I didn't mention the Fisher person off.
We hope for the logo to match reality sooner than later.
And that completes my communications. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going on now to item number 5, which is General Plan Amendment, GPA-106-24, for adoption of the 2023 to 2031 housing element of the general plan, file number 2023-025. Rick, what? recommend California Environmental CEQA Act, Quality Act, CEQA, and the action would be adoption of an initial study negative declaration.
I'm going to sneak to the bathroom. I don't know if anybody
Oh.
else needs a break, because this is going to be a long item, I think. So.
Oh, maybe, sorry, you guys all just came up, but we've been here longer than everybody else. May we take a 5-minute break? Okay, thanks. We'll be back at 7:58. Oh, you're right. Whatever. I forgot to read. It's a good thing.
Oh, yeah, it's cool. What did I do with it?
I'm excited to be here this evening to speak with the council about this important task to update the city's housing element to the general plan. Before I start, I just want to let you know we have our full housing element team here this evening. To my left, Karen Murphy from the City Attorney's Office. To my right, Nick Hamilton from Good City Company. Also from Good City Company, Aaron Acknan, Carol Johnson, Sabina Mora, and from my team, Senior Planner Brianne Harkusha, as well as the Planning Commission's liaison, Greg Wright, and Sandy Council from Good City Company. Sarah. We're having an issue advancing the slides. I apologize for the delay.
Christian, while you're working out the slides, would you go over Good City Company one more time? That was a little fast.
Absolutely. So from your left to right, we have Aaron Acknan, Sandy Council, Sabina Mora, and Carol Johnson.
Thank you.
All right, there we go. So for our discussion tonight, several points here on the agenda, a bit of background on the housing element update process, key housing element components, community input and prior consideration of the draft housing elements that we've prepared, responding to the California Housing and Community Development Department, or HCD's comments, the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA analysis and staff recommendation, and then the recommended council action. For background, the housing element is a part of the city's general plan, and it must be compliant with housing element law and the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA, for which we're currently in the 6th cycle, covering the years 2023 through 2031. The city's housing element update process commenced in August of 2022, immediately following adoption of the 2040 general plan in July of 2022. And as an element of the general plan, its update required review and recommendation from the Planning Commission to the City Council, and then final action by the City Council, which we are requesting from the Council this evening. The housing element can be understood really in two main categories. The first is the housing sites inventory. So it's a map of the locations where various sites have been identified with capacity to accommodate future housing development. And then there are a set of policies and programs making up the second major part of the housing element, providing policies across a whole range of issues, including how to make it easier to get housing approved and constructed, and how to provide support for other kinds of housing-related activities like housing rehabilitation and supportive housing services. To start first with the housing sites inventory, this chart here compares the city's regional housing needs allocation from the 5th cycle, the one that went through 2015 or 2014, depending how you count it, through 2022 or 2023. In other words, the prior housing element. The city's RHNA allocation was 413 housing units. You can see on the right, the current RHNA for the city for the 2023 through 2031 period is 1,892 units. So much larger than the prior housing element cycle, which presented some unique challenges for a city like ours to plan for so much new housing. In order to comply with the city's obligation to accommodate the regional housing needs allocation, we first had to understand what that allocation was in terms of income level. These income levels have different requirements under the law for planning and demonstrating the sufficiency of sites. And you can see here more than 500 of our RHNA, 500 units, are for the very low income level, 310 for low income, moderate income, 291 units, above moderate, 753, for a total RHNA of 1,892 units. And these income levels, the very low, low, et cetera, those are expressed in percentages of area median income for San Mateo County. Here you can see a table breaking down some of the key strategies used to accommodate the RHNA. So we first started with looking at approved housing units that were already in the pipeline, a little over 200 units in that category. We applied the methodology accepted by the state to count accessory dwelling unit projected development for a little under 200 units. We looked at the existing general plan capacity in terms of sites and the land use designations in the 2040 general plan and found a capacity that we could count towards the housing element of a little over 100 units, which resulted in a pretty sizable amount of rezoning, amending the general plan, in other words, and the zoning map to create new residential development capacity. And even though the RENA was 1,892 units, these strategies combined would identify 2,574 units of housing element capacity to provide the city a buffer or a surplus over the minimum RENA, which is critical over the next 8-year period to avoid what's sometimes called a no net loss situation. In other words, where the city's taking an action such as approval of a housing project, perhaps at fewer units or at different income levels than had been assumed. And by having a sufficient buffer now, we're avoiding the need to have to go back on the fly, if you will, to rezone sites in the middle of the housing element cycle. So it's, in a sense, an insurance program against having to do that. Additionally, it shows the city's commitment to providing a broad array of sites for particularly lower income housing development, which we'll look at here. So taking all of the city's strategies, accessory dwelling units, existing capacity, projects in the pipeline, and rezoning, you can see overall we've provided in the housing element a buffer of 36% above the minimum required to accommodate the RENA. Most importantly, and something that I'm proud of and that our team is proud of, is the effort that's gone in on the staff side, the consultant side, community, commission, and council side to create a lower income capacity of 50% above our required planning figure. Again, that shows the city's commitment to lower income housing development, and it also helps to ensure that we have sufficient remaining sites throughout the 8-year planning period for those in most need of affordable housing, those at the lower income levels. And to visualize the work that went in as well, it's important to recognize the effort that went into identifying sites throughout the city. Rather than picking a few sites and concentrating in certain areas, we took a really broad view, given the task and the challenge of planning for so many housing units. And we found sites distributed throughout our community so that no site and no part of the city is overburdened. And this was also important for affirmatively furthering fair housing and other housing-related policy purposes as well, to show that we are providing housing opportunities in the highest resource areas of our community, so that anyone that lives in those units in the future, particularly lower income occupants, have the greatest chance to thrive and really become a part of the best of what Pacifica has to offer. Shifting now to policies and programs, the second significant component of the housing element. The draft housing element before you has 14 programs with numerous implementation actions associated with each program. What this comprises, in addition to the rezonings, is a really robust work program for the coming years to amend the city's ordinances and policies, programs, and regulations in order to really create the conditions for housing to be approved and constructed in our community. Some of the notable programs, just to highlight them, program number 1, we may talk about that quite a bit this evening. It's the general plan and zoning amendments to implement the RENA. Program 2, implementation program 2, zoning modernization and streamlining. This includes an item of great interest to our community, which is a comprehensive zoning update and particularly implementing what's known as objective development standards and objective design standards, which will establish the kinds of projects that the city really wants to see developed. Program number 5, to establish a housing action fund. Good news is we've leaned in the last year's budget and actually done some of this work already, identifying some money from the excess ERAF that we've dedicated towards potential housing projects and activities in the future. Some other notable programs, Program 8, rehabilitation of homes in lower resource and coastal areas. This will be an innovative effort by the city to try to take a proactive approach to housing maintenance before complaints come in through the code enforcement process, to reach out and engage with property owners to figure out the underlying causes for the deteriorated properties, and to try to connect them with resources to improve their properties before they get into the cycle of a code enforcement and a punitive process with the city. Program 12, Fair Housing Affirmative Marketing Strategy. So doing more with the city's established regulations for the many affordable housing units that we expect to come online in the next 8 years to ensure that the right people are learning about those housing opportunities, including marketing specifically, for example, to schools located outside of our high opportunity areas to try to bring people into the highest opportunity areas in Pacifica. And then Program 14, State and Federal Law Conformance. This is a broad range of activities we need to undertake to really update the city's regulations and ordinances that in some respects haven't received the attention they've needed over the past years, to bring them in line with state law and to really express the values and the importance of our community to support housing development across all types of housing. Throughout the housing element update process, community input has really been foremost on the staff and consultant team's minds. It's been instrumental in informing some of the key policy making and site strategies, for example, in the housing element process. We carried over the community input, in fact, from prior planning activities like the general plan update, rather, and the Home for All community processes to hear about what types of housing our community could really get behind. Things like focusing on infill development, redeveloping shopping centers, and trying to protect the hillsides that really make Pacifica the community that everybody loves. The extensive community engagement process started actually with the City Council's approval of the community engagement strategy, and it included major outreach activities like a citywide mailer, in-person online community engagement opportunities, 3 community meetings across Pacifica and online, 6 Planning Commission and City Council meetings, 2 review and comment periods on draft documents, and the 2 public hearings prior to adoption of the housing element. A really extensive effort has been made to try to inform the community of this process and to learn more about what they think about it. In addition, the City Council and the Planning Commission have been extensively involved throughout the development of the draft housing element process. The City Council specifically has participated in 3 meetings between March and October of 2023 on various aspects contributing to the draft housing element that's before you. Of note, 3 joint study sessions with the Planning Commission where 18 major policy items were discussed in depth over the 2 sessions, really allowing the time that was needed, I think, to get into the nuts and bolts of the key underpinnings of the housing element. Importantly, those processes, the joint study sessions allowed confirmation of the sites inventory and provided direction on key programs and policies that allowed us to finalize revisions to the draft housing element. And the Planning Commission, importantly, recommended approval to the City Council of the housing element that's before you on January 4th of this year. And so, in other words, from my perspective anyways, the City Council has vetted the sites list and the most significant program approaches in the housing element, and we're grateful for that early input in the process. While getting the housing element right for the council and for our community to ensure the development of housing is the most important from my perspective, it is critically important as well to achieve certification of the housing element by the California Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD. And so briefly on that process, following the early steps in the housing element update, the city submitted the draft housing element to HCD for a 90-day review period in May of 2023. City staff held meetings with HCD, one of them in person actually, to tour them around and explain from our perspective the housing challenges and the potential approaches the city wanted to pursue in the housing element in July. In August, we received our written comments from HCD, and we spent a significant amount of time with the community and with the council and commission talking through those comments and the direction that was needed to make changes. Throughout September and October, joint study sessions with council and planning commission, and a whole lot of work internally on the staff and consultant side to put all of that together into the revised housing element. If you've looked at the red line version, you can see just how much has changed from the beginning of this process, and that reflects, from my perspective, our best effort from the staff side to incorporate all of that input. And so it culminated in an updated draft released to the community in December for their review and comment, leading up to the Planning Commission public hearing on January 4th. And so you will see attached to the draft resolution that the staff's recommending be adopted tonight There's detailed discussion of how the draft housing element that's prepared would substantially comply with state law governing housing elements, as well as how the modifications would comply with HCD's comments. And so in order to comply with the California Environmental Quality Act, which is another important part of this process, the city prepared an initial study negative declaration, or ISND, and found that adoption of the draft housing element could not have a significant effect on the environment. The ISND was available for public review and comment from November 16th through December 18th, 2023. We received 8 comment letters from individuals in the community and no agency comments. Responses to those comments received are included in the staff report. And so to end my presentation, I do want to make a modified staff recommendation from the one that's in the agenda packet. The first part's the same, to recommend to adopt the resolution to adopt an initial study negative declaration to comply with the California Environmental Quality Act. Paragraph B there is new. We would ask that you revise the draft housing element to rename one of the programs. Upon another read through, we identified one that was confusingly titled. We ask that you change program HEI3 to Master Planning and Implementation for Public Sites. It's erroneously stated as school sites, even though the program speaks more broadly to various types of publicly owned properties. And then third part of the recommendation, to approve the 2023 through 2031 housing element of the general plan and to incorporate all documents and testimony into the record by reference. Thank you.
Are there council questions? And Tiger.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A brief comment and 2 questions. Brief comment being thank you. Heaven forbid I should not remember to say thank you once more before this meeting is over. All you fine folks at Good City and our staff, and I know how much work has gone into this over now years, so thank you. Welcome, Commissioner Wright. Just out the gate, I think generally speaking, you give us a rundown on what the meeting looked like, or what the consensus was rather. If you would be so kind as to give us the Planning Commission perspective going in, I'd appreciate it.
Is it all right if I step up here? We seem to have a little shortage of seating this evening.
Did you just call me short, Commissioner Wright?
Well, Honorable Mayor Vadalas and council members, I cannot reiterate as much as what you said earlier about how much I appreciate staff and our consultants for this huge, heavy lift. This is a enormous document full of a ton of detail in minuscule things that needed to conform with the state mandate. This was not something we took on by choice. This is something that was put on us, and they have done an incredible job putting this together for us. They've bent over backwards to accommodate both the desires of the planning commissioners, of council, but more importantly from the public, so that this document represents the values of Pacificans. The progressive way that we have our buffer system set up, that's a Pacifica value. The considerations that we took in terms of traffic and dispersing out the burden throughout the entire community, that's a Pacifica value. All that was weaved in, made to work inside of a state mandate by our staff and our consultants. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate all that they did to do that. It was a long, tedious process. We took input from, as he outlined, multiple times. We took full consideration from all the stakeholders, such as the public, the Planning Commission. Am I getting dinged out of time?
No. No.
Okay. To put together this finished product that we then voted to forward to you for approval. During this process, we examined all the sites, tried to consider how it would affect traffic patterns, another one of the big considerations that came from the public. Safety, equity, affordability, all those kind of factors went into processing this. I can't tell you how proud I am of our community. At that meeting that I went to where I saw many of you, how many of the community came out to voice their concerns, and let us know so that we can try to weave that into our new housing element for what Pacifica we want it to look like in the future. Let's see. I spoke about the housing buffer and the progressive system that feels like. In addition to that, I spoke about how they bent over. Other than that, I'm again impressed by staff and our consultants, and I want to thank them very much. And I hope in the future we'll have the Pacifica we all want. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And while I cannot say thank you enough to Good City and to our staff, it has been a joy working side by side with Planning Commission on some occasions through this process. Thank you, Commissioner Wright. So my final question, again, it's a fairly short one. We actually received an email from Cindy Abbott in which she recommended a very small change of inserting 4 words into a part of the document. Without going into detail, I just want to verify that if we were to make a small change about a thing we might do in relation to STRs, it won't derail the process, and it would likely be an easy insert.
Thank you, Councilmember Big Stick. As it relates to short-term rentals, the housing element does mention them and explain that there is pressure in our assessment on potential displacement in order to convert some number of long-term housing units to short-term rental use. The best data we have is that's less than 1% of the housing units in Pacifica, and so for purposes of analyzing and demonstrating potential impacts to housing from a variety of sources, the housing element is adequate in that regard, and that it does identify short-term rentals in that policy context. The concern that staff would have at this point is inserting new language or amplifying certain policies at this point in time, or particular issues, more concerningly, like short-term rentals, beyond what's already in the document, does have the potential for HCD on its next review to dig deeper into those issues that we've highlighted that weren't subject to their prior comments. And so our goal and really objective for preparing this response is to address the comments already put forth by HCD, to try to check those off the list and get to certification in substantial compliance. There is a risk to make a change of the sort requested that HCD could look at that and say, oh, well, they're highlighting STRs in this way. Tell us more about that, and then trigger a whole new line of comment and response that could elongate the housing element process. And so that's a risk of making a further amendment of that sort at this stage in the process.
So what you're telling me is that though the language might seem benign at a first glance, and certain council members may or may not, myself being one of them, are drooling over opportunities to memorialize what clearly are heartfelt citizen concerns, adding language that from a lay perspective may seem benign might actually cause HCD to dig deeper into the document and prolong the process longer.
That's correct.
And if I may add to what Planning Director Murdoch said about this, I think it's important to acknowledge when it comes to short-term rentals, as Mr. Murdoch said, it is addressed and that the city is going to be working on new regulations, and that's mentioned in the housing element. But more importantly, the council outside of the housing element, I mean, that state compliance document is not the end-all, be-all of council initiatives. So outside of the housing element, the council has established as strategic priority to work on short-term regulations in Pacifica, and we will be doing that. But to the point of sort of the balancing question for the council is, do you want to risk opening up a new issue in HCD, needing to vet that more and delay the process more of certification?
And I appreciate that we are working fervently on our level to the degree that we can, and whether or not it's memorialized as we might want it to. What we don't need is create more work for ourselves. Thank you.
Are there other questions before we turn it over to public comment?
I have a couple.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have more questions, but I think I'd rather do them outside of public comment too. But could you, I appreciate your, I appreciate everything. There's so much here. It was a very long agenda. There's a lot of red lines, so there's a lot of changes that we haven't seen before, and so I've tried to spend time and pore over that. But I really appreciate the work that was done by all of you, and especially around the area of affirmatively furthering fair housing, AFFH, which I think is a big need in our city. So I'll just say thank you to start with. In terms of overall schedule, could you, Christian, maybe tell us a little bit more about what's to come for the public too? I know that the CEQA process is underway and will continue. When do you think we might see a draft of that as a first question?
Sure. So I'll take that in two parts. So hopefully the projected remainder of the housing element update process, and then shifting to questions about the implementation programs, which was part of your question, as I understand it. So the remaining housing element process is largely out of the city's control at this point in time. What we will do after the city council adopts the housing element is submit it to HCD. They'll have a 60-day review period, and then determine if they have further comments on the city's draft housing element. So our goal, of course, is to get a letter from them indicating substantial compliance. But the reality is, they may have further comments, which will trigger further consideration by staff and potentially return to Planning Commission and Council, depending on the nature of changes that are needed. So it could be as soon as, let's say, 60 to 90 days to have a certified housing element, or some amount of time longer based on HCD's comments that come out of this next review. We are not planning, however, to delay further work on the rezoning program that we know we need to complete, waiting for HCD's certification. A critical outcome of housing element adoption is solidifying the sites the City Council has identified, so we can then finally advance formally the environmental review work to prepare the environmental impact report, or EIR, for the rezoning program. Give or take 2 to 3 months, more than likely to get a public review draft out to the community. And then best projection right now is the middle of this year, June, July timeframe, potentially to have public hearings for the rezoning program contemplated in program number 1. A lot of variables could affect those timelines, just in full disclosure, but that's a realistic, maybe slightly optimistic timeline on those items.
Okay, and then I just wanted to ask for a little clarification on objective design standards, because I know the Planning Commission has talked about this a little bit in terms of certain sites. I understand as part of the CEQA process, there'll be some, I think, for the 6 setbacks, heights, density. Anyway, if you can explain that a little bit more, and sort of the, well, just to back up for a little bit of explanation to the public, there's, with a lot of these projects that become ministerial review, where we don't have public hearings, and the state is cracking down on what we can look at, there's not a lot of control right now until we have those in place. That define height and massing and so forth. So if I understand correctly, so there's a first phase of that'll be part of the rezoning and the EIR, and then a second phase later. Can you explain the differences between the documents in those 2 phases, and the critical components of the 2?
Sure. So looking at the housing element implementation timeline, first priority, of course, is to complete the rezoning program. We're obligated under the law to do that, to establish the capacity to comply with our regional housing needs allocation. The second program identified in the housing element immediately follows, and it's a year plus or minus timeline to do the comprehensive zoning update to come up with a broad range of objective development and design standards. That is a very time and resource intensive process. It's something the city hasn't done in decades, right, to do a comprehensive zoning update. And we need to go beyond what traditionally is entailed there because of changes in state law, limiting the city to applying objective zoning standards that are adopted for most types of housing projects. The concern expressed earlier in this process is there was a gap in time, right, where the rezonings might be completed, but all of the standards to regulate projects would not be in place. And so sort of interim direction was given to prepare a subset of development standards the 6 ODS, as you might see referenced in various places, things like height, lot coverage, setbacks, and so forth. Very basic development standards. And the way I like to think of them is prevent bad projects from happening in that interim period while we're working on the standards to make good projects happen. And so what we're trying to do is to put those into this phase 1 rezoning program to be in the EIR and to be adopted in that middle of 2024 timeframe, while we take the better part of another year to come up with a much more comprehensive and detailed suite going beyond just those 6 criteria.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions? Okay, not seeing any questions for now. I will go to the public, and I currently have one card. Nick Kosla. You have 3 minutes.
She also has a comment card she wanted to fill out.
She just needs to fill out a card.
Yeah, and then give it to the city clerk or whoever it is. How many minutes do I have?
3.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Mayor Vaterlos, Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer, and members of the council. My name is Nick Costa with Toll Brothers. Toll Brothers is a national home building company. We're active in, I think, 26 states now. Locally, our Bay Area office is in Pleasanton, California. Personally, I live in the East Bay, and it takes me about 40 minutes to get here if there's no traffic over the bridge. Coincidentally, I met my wife in Montero Beach 30 years ago. So this area has always been very special to us. I have 2 teenagers. They come in here probably more than I would want them to. I don't know what they're doing out here. They tell me they go hiking and go to Taco Bell, so hopefully that's it. So I understand that this is a very special community. And, obviously you folks have dedicated a whole lot of time to this community, and it is really incredible. It means a lot to me personally, but not obviously nearly as much as it does to all of you who are working for the city. We were informed the owner of the Seabowl had decided to retire and close the bowling alley, and we're one of several groups that were approached. So we never approached the bowling alley owner about the site. We were approached. And I think a lot of that was because of our good reputation we have delivering on what we say we're going to build. And I think if you were to talk to, feel free to call League of California Cities, talk to different mayors, city council members, planning commissioners, city staff throughout the Bay Area. If you give them our name, my name personally, I can give you a list of folks you can call. And they say, when Nick says he's going to build something, what does it look like from what he says he's going to do to the end? And they will all say, he did what he told us he was going to do. I take a lot of pride in that. My birthday's on Friday. I'm going to be 47 years old, so I want to keep doing the right thing. We submitted a plan that, quite frankly, I think is a starting point. It's for approximately 81 townhomes, 10 duplexes, and 22 affordable accessory dwelling units. Now, that plan represents 12% of the city's above moderate RHNA requirement and 7% of its lower income RHNA requirement. It's a significant amount of both market rate and below market rate housing we've underwritten, we've done the civil engineering on, architecture, landscape architecture, arborist reports, all the consultant reports are done. We're ready to build this project. We've also agreed to the brewery site next door. They'll make significant improvements to their site, including building them a loading dock, redoing the entire driveway, and also there's a bad slope, I don't know if folks have ever been there, to actually get up, which has trouble in getting trucks in there to distribute, which, as some of you probably have heard, that brewery's been having some struggles. We hope to make it better. We're also doing a fiscal impact study to show what the current use does versus how our housing would affect the city financially. We also are certainly committed to a community benefits package to the city, which we work with city staff and the council to get to. For these reasons, we urge that we were put back into the housing element like we were a couple months ago. Unfortunately, I couldn't make that meeting. I was at a funeral. I think that decision was made around 12:30 at night. And I really wish I'd gotten the chance to speak at that meeting to kind of talk about this, but I wasn't available, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you,
Sorry
Nick.
about the overage.
Thank you. Judy Hansen.
Hi, good evening.
So my main goal to be here is to represent, it's going to sound funny, but the frogs. You know, the little animals and the little snake, the gardener snake, and the birds, and all the little animals that don't have a voice about. I saw this drawing on next door about this big building going in on what used to be pasture land between Valley Mar and Rockaway Beach on the ocean side of the freeway. And I was around in the 70s when people were standing on the ridges ready to build condos, and people got together and preserved it, whether it was one carload at a time, taking citizens up there to see how precious that land was, or whether it was, Leo Ryan's help and tragic death. But I see what's possible when people do preserve nature for the future. And for the people now, how healing nature is, and how we've grown up kind of just seeing the dollar. I appreciate there's a lot of feeling and caring here, and I know people need housing, and especially low-income housing. But if we can really honor these thoughts of building inward and upward, where, like you mentioned, older shopping centers and things, because once the land's gone, it's gone. And it's so healing. And if there's something probably all of us could agree on is the healing aspects of nature, and the need for time to be in nature, and realize how we're a part of nature, how nature is us, and how she goes, so do we go. And there's so much we don't know and understand these days, but we're starting to understand. So I appreciate the time, and I want to empower everyone who loves nature to go ahead and believe that we could probably create a restoration pond there, and allow wildlife to come back to the area, and stay off the hills as much as we can, and try to meet our needs, but know that we're part of the earth, and she needs a voice, and she needs to be represented, and we can do it. We can do it all. I'm sure we can do it. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy. Anyone else from the public? Okay, come, Kimberly.
Good evening, staff, City Council. Kimberly Finale, resident of Pacifica. As I'm sitting here listening to your excellent presentation and deliberations to come, Toll Brothers developer, I am reminded of the garbage that I pick up every day in our town on the beach, and the majority of that garbage being single-use plastic. And I would like to ask that as new developers come in and make proposals to build, this is inevitable, that we, in an effort to reduce single-use plastic in the town, ask them to install in their community areas refillable water bottle stations instead of just either nothing or a drinking fountain. So that way when kids are going out to play or they're heading off to school, they've got their container, they can fill it up while they're playing outside, and so can anyone else, instead of carrying plastic water bottles around with them. We need to stay hydrated, we need to stay healthy, the town's gonna grow, but also more garbage is gonna come with that. So anything we can do to cut down on those single-use plastics will be noticeable by those of us who clean it up every day all around town. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other cards, is there anyone on the phone?
We have two raised hands. The first is Cindy Abbott.
Okay. Go ahead, Cindy.
Okay, I just got enabled. Good evening, Mayor Vater-Loss and City Council members. I've been bringing up concerns about short-term rentals for almost 2 years now, and I appreciate City Council's support in adding this to last year's work plan, and all of the additional members of the public who have been speaking up and expressing their concerns about the impact to the community. However, as we continue to hear about workload problems and pushing back on the timing for making a meaningful update to the short-term rental ordinance, we really would like you to add 4 small words, quote, "not permitting unhosted rentals," as part of the housing element in the short-term rental section that was mentioned by staff to show your commitment to forward movement. Other cities, such as the recently approved housing element in San Francisco, as well as their 2014 plan, includes the need for restrictions on short-term rentals. I find it very hard to believe that adding those 4 words would derail the entire City of Pacifica plan. It would really only show the commitment and deepen it in the eyes of the HCD about the city's getting into every aspect that they can to preserve affordable housing options. And we as the public need you to show us your commitment to doing this. Please add those 4 words to the housing element and move forward with making this happen for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
The last raised hand is Michael Vernazza.
Okay, go ahead, Michael.
Hello, Council. Thank you so much for working all night again, as you do many nights, as well as the Planning Commission. I wanted to thank Nick for coming out and raising his concerns. And I'm here representing our community that many of our council members are familiar with. And we do need public places. And we're very happy with the decision that was made. So if you can't find a way to still build a bunch of housing and maintain our public spaces in our communities centers, I'm more than happy to go find a way to raise money and buy it from you, because we're not just going to walk away from this, that's for sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.
There are no other raised hands.
Okay, seeing no one else, I will bring it back to council for deliberation. Tiger?
I'm happy to start deliberation, but I wonder if there aren't questions of staff before going into deliberation. And if
Christine?
I have questions, yeah.
Go ahead.
But I'm happy to give other people an opportunity.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, okay. Okay, sorry, I do have a number of questions. Okay. I'm going to get myself organized because I wasn't quite ready. Back to the CEQA review for a second. And when I say page numbers, I'm referring to the red line version of the housing element, just to confuse you, because it's not the agenda, because I had gotten a head start before the agenda came out. And so on page 42 of that document, it talks about further CEQA analysis done by January 26th. I think that was in relation to the rezoning too. And I'm just wondering if is that other CEQA analysis that we need to do, or maybe that's something left over when we thought we were going to complete all this by January?
We don't have the document in front of us.
Christine, can you say what section that's in? I know you have a page number, but is it like in the?
Yeah, sorry, I have to scroll then back.
It's the housing element document itself. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
She has the red line version.
Yeah, so it has more pages than, maybe it's something staff can pull up. I don't, because I do have a few different things I need to look at. Do you have that handy, Christian or Sarah? page 42, it's number 11. Oh, wait, maybe I've got the wrong page number. No, sorry, it's number 14. It says, initiate any required CEQA environmental analysis for comprehensive zoning modernization program by January 2026.
Christian, section H12, number 14.
Number 14.
So
Right. For number 2, there is quite possibly a need to do further CEQA on the comprehensive zoning update, all of the new objective standards and other zoning modernization. So the potential exists for that to be necessary as part of program number 2.
Okay. And then, sorry, this relates back to a question that I asked in my email about ministerial review. And this is on the same page. Oh, no, sorry. I'm sorry, I just have so much paper in front of me, it's a little hard. Oh, yeah, it's number 8. So I'm just trying to understand, can you just kind of back up and explain what happens with a CEQA review process? So once this is adopted and we have projects that are only ministerial review, I understand staff does an analysis of whether, it's a negative deck or some other review is required. But this is not anything that goes to the public, right? Ever in terms of environmental review?
That's right. So maybe to start first with what ministerial review means. So I think the most ready example that I have is the regular single-family homeowner wants to do an addition to their home or maybe build a new home on a vacant lot. In many places in Pacifica, that's subject to ministerial review and approval. And you can just come to the planning department, apply for a building permit, go through that staff level review process, the ministerial component, and get your building permit once you've met all of the standards that are on the books relative to that type of development. Ministerial approvals are not subject to further environmental review, so there's no CEQA process. So you meet the requirements that are adopted and you get your permit and you carry out your building activity. What many of these programs will result in is much larger types of projects being subject to ministerial review. That's something that's relatively uncommon in Pacifica. But to comply with state law, in a variety of circumstances, we are obligated to adopt new regulations that do allow approval by ministerial process. Certain types of affordable housing projects, for example, with 20% lower income units as one of the qualifying criteria. So the CEQA review putting those regulations in place, or rather the process to amend the city's regulations to put that type of ministerial process in place is subject to CEQA review, but subsequent to that, those projects will not be subject to further environmental review if they meet all of the criteria and are eligible for a building permit only.
Okay, so as a hypothetical, say there's a big project with 40 units and 20% are affordable, but there's a wetland on the site. So what kind of CEQA review process, if any, would be required, and is there any public input on that at all?
Likely no California Environmental Quality Act review, given it's a ministerial project. However, other applicable state and federal laws like wetlands permitting requirements through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers or California Department of Fish and Wildlife or Water Resources, those all remain applicable, and those individual property owners will be obligated to comply with those state and federal laws regarding sensitive resource protections, for example.
Okay, but there's no opportunity for the public to be involved at all?
To the extent those permitting processes have a public component, there is. But through the city, through a public hearing locally, the answer is almost certainly no.
Okay, yeah. I just want to make sure the public understands, because this is a really big shift to how development projects have been reviewed, and we have a very engaged public, and I mean, none of us are completely happy with what the state is forcing upon us. And I think, former Mayor Sudagri mentioned that in her comment letter to us too. But everything I've heard is that, the state is all for these housing laws. Cities haven't been doing their job to build housing, and so we don't really have a choice. But it's going to be very different, for our town. Okay. You still want me to keep going? I wanted to ask a little bit about infrastructure capacity improvement. So I appreciate the technical memorandum that was sent about the Rockaway pump station. So one of the things I noticed is that the analysis just looked at surplus. So it looked at the 3 sites that are in that area between Rockaway and Valleymar that are the key sites. Sorry, I'm forgetting the terminology. The core sites in the RENA, and then it lists surplus buffer of 21 units. And I know in our last meeting we ended up adding more buffer sites there. So my total of sites 12I and J are 291 units instead of 21. So I'm just wondering if that is something that needs adjusting in the analysis.
Right. I think the answer is no. I think the task we were setting out to demonstrate to HCD relative to the infrastructure constraints capacity was to meet the core RENA. And so that's why we've documented the infrastructure capacity that would result to implement the RENA. And so I think in that sense, we feel like the analysis for housing element adoption purposes is adequate. Certainly in the environmental review process, infrastructure capacity is something that requires analysis, and we may have additional data at that time, for instance, including additional flow data as the City Council's approved by separate action recently to approve contract for that. So we might learn more about that and perhaps confirm, for example, there's more capacity than we anticipated now, or that will result from the future infrastructure improvements in the area. So this is the best information available based on the data that's available to be analyzed currently.
And then this report says, that the additional 200 units to meet core RENA in this area are permissible after the sewer work is done to reduce the I&I rate. So, so there's a limitation for a little while, is what I'm.
That's correct. I think it's our assessment that given the 8-year period we're obligated to analyze, and given the estimated scheduling of those capital improvements, roughly in the middle of that period, thinking about the subsequent processes for rezoning and any project of that scale to come in, for example, most of them are likely to be subject to discretionary review, for example, and subject to further environmental review. So given the things that we can control and reasonably foresee, we feel comfortable with this estimation and relationship of that capital improvement to replace the sewers in Rockaway and Valleymar relative to the timing of these housing units potentially coming online.
Okay. And I saw a reference to, I think it was 1,000 units that the North Coast County Water District had analyzed and, had decided was okay within their capacity. But that also is obviously shy of the 2574 that we're zoning for. I think all this is being reviewed as part of the EIR. Is that right? If there are other capacity improvements that we need in other infrastructure?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. So, we will make further contact with North Coast County Water District as our water provider. I will say, my sense is that they've looked primarily at what single-family residential development would look like and calculated estimated water usage for those types of developments. The much denser multifamily development that we're anticipating through the housing element typically uses far less water, for example. So it's not clear it's an apples-to-apples comparison of the 900 units or so of water district forecast capacity relative to multifamily housing units forecast in the housing element. So we do have some further work to do in that regard.
Okay. And then jumping to short-term rentals, I guess I'm personally a little disappointed that there's not more data in this document, and even just trying to understand where we are about the number of units right now, and I understand staff is going to work on a presentation to us, coming up soon. But, I see that HCD is concerned about the 51 units that we lost, in Esplanade, and wanted to know information about that, and low-income residents that were displaced. When I first brought the issue of STRs to the council, it was an affordable unit, a person that was being displaced for that conversion. And so I feel like we're missing data to really understand the impacts to our affordable housing on that. And I understand HCD hasn't asked for it, but, reading all the comment letters from the public now, that came for this meeting are all related to short-term rentals. And, Cindy Abbott's letter, I appreciate that she actually pulled out all the comments from the public, and, 26 of 221 were about short-term rentals, 12%. And so, it really is something that the community cares about, and I don't feel like we really know the impacts. And as we're starting to work on policies and so forth, I think that'll be really important for us to understand. I'm deliberating now more than asking a question, but I don't know what the answer is, so we'll talk about that. Anyway, so you really haven't heard HCD asking for any of that information despite all the letters from the public. I know they quoted certain letters from the public, and like I know Nancy Tierney's letter, they mentioned her by name, and she had talked about short-term rentals. Do we know for sure that they're not looking for more information for that at this point?
We have not assessed from the staff side that HCD requires further analysis of that issue relative to the housing element. To your broader range of concerns, I hear that and understand, and the staff understands, and as the city manager has expressed, we are bringing more information to the council outside of the housing element process. And to the extent you want that information to support some sort of policy action, really the housing element's not going to be a good place to have that information. Short-term rental statistics are dynamic. Taking more time to dig deeper and maybe stratify that across income levels and displacement will all take a fair amount of time. That information can be put together to support council action on an ordinance outside of the housing element process and really serve the purpose for which I feel like you're expressing that you wanted. It's to support a decision relative to a policy action. And so that's really a good place to do that is in the housing element or the short-term rental ordinance process.
May I?
Go ahead, yeah.
Mary, did you have something to add to that? Or?
Go ahead, I will have my turn.
Because that was where I was going to begin deliberation. As near as I can tell, the conversations the five of us had, our priorities look something like housing element, LCLUP, short-term rentals. And so when I got Cindy's letter and I looked at four little words, and I thought to myself, surely that shall not cause a problem if we put it in. And, I listened to however many hours I have of the Coastal Commission, December 14th, I think, where HCD is there, and the doctor talking about his study on STRs is there. And it strikes me that this practically should be something HCD would be into is, the city has it on their mind to make sure their housing stock is safer. And there's this part of me emotionally that really super wants to put it in there because I think that it is benign, and not only that, I think it's something that the state would respect. Mm-hmm. And then there's this other part of my mind that hears staff who says, look, we're trying to get this thing through so that we don't have bigger issues. And if we add things that might invite HCD to want to look deeper. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't mind collaborating with the state in such a way, except we seem to be under a gun. And that makes me not want to cause a ripple where there doesn't need to be one, with the full and robust understanding that I have to choke down what I'd really like to be doing, which is adding 4 little words to the tune of, well, we're going to be putting this through sooner than later because it is one of our top 3 priorities. I could very easily be convinced otherwise. If there's consensus on council, I would gladly vote with it. But right now, I feel like I want to get this thing through because already I'm having trouble with the way the state has conducted the process, and I'd rather make peace than cause greater frictions unwittingly.
Mary.
Well, I wasn't going to talk about that part, but if there's anyone else who wants to, we can go ahead. Because, I mean, for me personally, I'm super committed to look, at our STR ordinance, and I think we're all committed to do that. Do I think this is the right place to start adding things? I'm not sure about that. But I am committed moving forward to address it. And I think, again, that we all are. I know the work that has gone into this. How many pages of comments did you address? I went through the red line document. It's amazing. Thank you so much for all of your hard work, for really taking in public comment. I see that, and I appreciate it. Outside of the STR discussion, I do have a question. Christian, can you tell me why there isn't a category for extremely low income? I just noticed that in your presentation here and in other parts of the document.
Yeah, I don't know why there isn't, but I can tell you where it fits in.
Okay.
So the RENA allocations as they're provided include above moderate all the way down to very low income. I don't know why there's not a separate extremely low income allocation, but what the state allows you to do and what we've done is to use a methodology to allocate for extremely low by splitting your very low 50% very low and 50% extremely low. So that's what we've done, and that's where the figures you see for extremely low income are coming from.
Okay.
So hopefully that explains and answers your question.
It does. Thank you so much. And then, to simply explain, I know there's a lot of questions about CEQA, right? And so we're going to be doing an EIR moving forward for the next phase, like the rezoning phase 1, right? Do I have that language right?
Correct.
It's pretty good that I have that language, period,
Very good.
right? And so what if something goes wrong within that process? Do we have to go back and change the housing element? What is that? Is that a big deal or,
Yeah.
we understand that.
Most likely you won't.
Okay.
And we wouldn't want to. We would want to exhaust every other option short of doing that because of the risks of reopening the housing element, no longer having a certified housing element, so on and so on. For the type of EIR that'll be prepared for the rezoning program, I can't tell the future, but you kind of know the types of impacts that are going to result from this type of major rezoning. There's potentially air quality issues, greenhouse gas issues, vehicle miles traveled issues. We're doing, a biological sort of reconnaissance assessment of these sites to see if there are critical resources that can't be avoided or would be impacted by housing to be developed on those sites. And so, the tools are there to acknowledge and disclose the impacts and still put into place the rezonings that are required without changing the sites. Is that ultimately something the council could do? Sure, as with any policy document, you can change it. It would be our strenuous recommendation, except for the most extreme environmental impact, which I can't imagine coming at this point in time, or that couldn't be mitigated while keeping the site. We wouldn't recommend that you reopen the sites again after adoption.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to go back to the issue of short-term rentals and 4 little words. I agree with statements that co-council members have made that, and others, and Director Murdoch has made, that the community seems to be looking for a commitment from the council, and that it would seal the deal for the community, the community that has communicated with us many times and will continue to do so on this issue. So first of all, while it's not the agendized topic, it is within the scope, if I'm not mistaken, City Attorney.
That's correct. I understand that you are discussing its inclusion in the housing element.
So I think I can concur with Councilwoman Beer that this council, to a person, has indicated a support for discussing this issue at length and implementing an update to our ordinance. The 4 words, they're small, but they pack quite a lot in. And I'm not sure putting 4 words into a document equates to studying the impact of not permitting unhosted rentals. I'm not comfortable making that sweeping of a policy commitment when we haven't had an opportunity to vet it, have our staff vet it. I think we know there's a significant impact. But even within the documents that were presented to us tonight and through email and public comment, not every community in San Mateo County is not permitting unhosted rentals. Some are, but I understand because I've been pushing on this issue for a while. I hate to keep bringing it up, but I did call for a moratorium on short-term rentals and was summarily informed by our city attorney that's not a great strategy to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So we are very committed to addressing this issue. We have quite a lot of nuts and Gordian knots to untangle due to the fact that we already have an ordinance and we are already in practice with permitted folks doing work with short-term rentals, unhosted. So that is before us. It is unfortunate and it is the reality. And I, for one, am pushing all the time on staff about this. So when I look at the language that's in the document, I count 27 words as it currently is. And I realize, like so many documents that we've been working on over time, such as the general plan update, the Sharp Park specific plan, the local coastal land use plan, there's a time element in the creation of these documents and over which there's an arc over which we are working. So the way the sentence that is currently on packet page 458 at the top, which is B6, as referenced by the email we received from Cindy Abbott.
Packet page 458, I believe, in the agenda packet.
In tonight's agenda packet. So I don't know where it fits on the red line. But the phrase specifically referring to the cap, the way this sentence reads, the city is working on options for additional regulations such as putting a cap on short-term rentals. That says to me that is a future action that we're going to take. And at the time that this was written, that's probably true. At the time this was written, we probably were, I was saying we need a moratorium and of things that hadn't yet been decided by this council. However, as of today, and as of I forgot what date, there in fact has been a vote for a cap. There is a cap. So is it triggering if we state that fact in our document? And I reworded the sentence and went from 27 words to 19 words. So I think that's good. I mean, this is a 1,400-page document or whatever. I'm doing my part, okay? So I understand the issue, and I appreciate everyone's urgency on this of not triggering a big old review and opening up and creating a big issue. But I do concur with the sentiment that probably in the end of the day, HCD's not too worried about this issue. I mean, in terms of, oh no, they're not going to have enough short-term rentals. I don't think that's their point of view. I truly don't. I mean, I know I'm kind of joking, but honestly. And so, but we can't presume. And so I understand not, we don't want to make a misstep in the very best intentions in responding to our community and in clarifying what is true, which is in fact that the city has placed a cap on short-term rentals. I wonder if there's a middle ground here where we can make that sentence say what is true and is studying other regulations on short-term rentals, which it says, and further study of other regulations on short-term rentals. Do you see where I'm going?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer. One thing that I would point out is that the short-term rental cap is a work in progress. It's not implemented in the coastal zone. It's under review by the Coastal Commission. So the way that it's worded is actually accurate, that we're working on that option right now. It's not done.
Because it hasn't been approved by the Coastal Commission.
Correct.
We submitted it, they gave us a response and asked for more information.
Correct.
And we're in the giving back more information to them, and then it will be scheduled as an item. Am I right?
Correct. Correct, yes.
Thank you for that clarification.
To your point about amendments and corrections, I know the Planning Commission did that in terms of changing the emergency shelter ordinance that we just passed. So, and I had asked the question of the city attorney previously too, if we wanted to make any changes, but didn't want to make things complicated, didn't have to go back to Planning Commission, as long as it was something that was clearly directed and deliberated before legally, that's okay, and that, I mean, whether HCD picks up on it or not, is a different question. But I was looking at some of that language too, and I understand the cap is still in progress. But the growing popularity of short-term rental market contributes to displacement pressure. Bothers me because it makes it sound like it's something out of our control. And, part of the popularity is that we're on the coast, and so, people like places with ocean views and, so forth. But, other cities like Half Moon Bay have past limitations. The data from that Caitlin and Jen Hansen shared, from other cities, and I think there are only 4 or 5 that were missing on their list from the county, and I'd really like to know if they have ordinances too, but almost all of them limited unhosted to either, somewhere between 0 and 120 days. And what that does is it doesn't mean the house has to be empty all the time, but it means that somebody has to live there part of the year, right? Or it's vacant. It's a property as an investment. And I know this is something we need to talk. I agree this is something that we're not going to solve today. That needs to come back. I see you shaking your head, and I want to agree with that too. But all I'm saying is I think we haven't done the analysis, and I think the market conditions that contribute to our problem are because a lot of the other cities have passed regulations, and so it's more popular to buy and convert places to short-term rentals here where we're more lenient, where we allow rentals all year long. And so that's where I'm missing the data that I really wish we had.
But that's, I want.
Go ahead, Mayor. Jump in.
Okay. This is something that we're looking at in the future. You can't add something that's not in our ordinance into the housing element because it's arbitrarily felt like in the public that they should add that. It's not in our ordinance. We're discussing the ordinance further down the line, and we keep discussing the short-term rental ordinance, which has nothing really to do with the housing element at this time because our regulations that we have are what we have, not what we're going to look at in the future.
But the analysis of the impacts to our housing isn't here. So that's my comment, not that I'm advocating for changing the wording to add unhosted, because I think it does need a bigger conversation. I agree with you there.
It does, it's not in our ordinance.
What I was going to suggest adding instead, because we have had discussions, we as a council have, the Planning Commission has given specific policies to look at and think about, is that we are not just working on the cap, but we are considering imposing limitations on unhosted rentals.
Why are you being that specific? We're going to look at the whole STR ordinance, not just hosted and unhosted.
Okay. And again, this is where I wish we had the data, because we don't even know how many of ours are unhosted versus hosted.
I know, I agree. I wish we had the data too. And that, the good news on that is it's going to be.
And we will.
We will.
Have the data.
It's coming.
We need it.
Yeah, if I may, I've shared this information before, and of course this will be in the background memo, but at least 95%, if not 100% of STRs in Pacifica are unhosted. So there's a significant number. So that creates a significant policy issue with a lot of other factors. That's the intent of undertaking the robust, holistic look at all of the data and study about the STR ordinance. It's going to be very complex. We're going to need to buckle up. We're going to do that work. We're going to make those changes. Council will make very informed policy decisions in the future based on all of that data. Again, going back to the housing element, any change to the language, even the 4 simple words where it uses the word unhosted, one of the questions it could be is HCD staff could say, well, how do you define unhosted? And that raises the question, well, we don't know because council hasn't had that policy discussion to define for Pacifica what unhosted means, right? So that, again, the balancing question that we're expressing is that that's a very triggering issue and a triggering phrase. Anything that we edit in this, HCD hasn't commented on STRs in the housing element. So what I'm recommending is that we don't want to invite them to or raise that up. They could, in the next go around, but if we make an edit to it, they certainly more likely would.
Mary?
Oh, no, I think my. Yeah.
Christine?
One more question about short-term rentals. So on page 51 of the red line version, and this is the section on fair housing issues, contributing factors, special needs, and it's at the bottom of that. So it's right before HEI 8. It's the metric. So it says no loss of existing deed-restricted affordable units in the planning period, and then no net loss of affordable housing units following any construction, redevelopment, or demolition projects resulting in the removal of affordable housing units. So my question is, does that language apply to short-term rental conversions too?
Councilmember Bowles, I'm not following where you are in the red line version. Can you state again, is it the PDF page? Is it the document page?
It's PDF page 51, just above HEI 8, the metric.
I guess to the extent that the loss of a deed-restricted affordable housing unit was the result of short-term rentals, there would be a connection, if that's the question.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me it would apply. Like, again, I'm thinking of these people that were displaced for, construction projects, but then the project was converted from a unit of housing to a short-term rental. So if this is something that we're saying as a metric, how are we measuring that for short-term rentals?
I think it would be likely challenging to do that within the current policy framework and the types of information that the ordinance requires us to collect to administer the current ordinance. Figuring out the best ways to address short-term rentals that might be proposed in a deed-restricted affordable housing unit seems like a sensible part of the broader STR discussion to have at that time when we're talking about the ordinance.
Deed restricted, they have deed restrictions. Sorry. The deed restricted units for low-income housing have a deed restriction.
The second sentence doesn't say deed restriction, so that's where
Well, yeah, I
I'm
can't
confused.
see that because
Yeah.
I don't have the red line version.
I guess what I also will say really quickly is that, Christine, your advocacy is going to be super important in our next conversation. And so I want to make that super clear that I'm looking forward to that, and I'm counting on you for that. So.
Okay, I guess I can skip it if you don't think it's important for now. Can you talk a little bit more about deed restrictions, though? So we're planning all these very low income or extremely low income ELI, very low income. Where and does the housing element describe any of that? But so how? Are we? If those types of units are proposed, what are the deed restrictions? What are the rental rates? What are the terms of the restrictions? Where is all that defined?
Yeah, currently it's in the city's inclusionary zoning program, for example, where affordability requirements are set forth based on ownership or rental units. That's one place that you would find some of those criteria currently in the city's regulations. Perhaps Sandy Council can elaborate more on 100% affordable housing projects that wouldn't be subject to the city's BMR ordinance, how in her experience those are worked through between the city and the developer and put into place.
Yes, and in order to count all of your affordable units, once you start doing your annual reports, evaluating your housing element, the state actually asks you whether the low-income units you're counting are deed restricted or not. And it's very typical, especially on a 100% affordable housing project that has many layers of financing, that every layer has its own criteria. And so there's definitely recorded documents that call out the different rent levels and all of the affordability-related requirements. And then even on the inclusionary units, there are deed-restricted documents, correct, that are recorded?
Correct.
Yeah.
And in addition, any density bonus projects that are counting affordable units would have deed restrictions, or any projects that come in with 20% affordable seeking by right approval would also have deed restrictions. So there are a number of different vehicles by which the city could require deed restrictions.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I guess I don't know where our inclusionary ordinance is. I had found the in lieu fee ordinance, but maybe you can point us to that. And is that something that you're suggesting that we review in the next few years also?
Right, so the inclusionary zoning is in Article 47 of Chapter 4 of Title 9 of the Municipal Code. So it's a zoning provision related to certain housing projects, 8 or more units, for example. One of the programs in the housing element does indicate revisiting. It's program HEI 6, considering the city's current inclusionary zoning standards and determining whether they should be modified. For example, go from 15% to 20% requirement, perhaps placing a greater emphasis on fee payment rather than on-site construction, or changing the required income levels of the units that are provided. So a number of different policy levers for the council to consider modifying, all of which have different trade-offs relative to incentivizing or disincentivizing housing construction and so on. So that is something that is contemplated in the housing element currently, to have that broad discussion of whether to make those types of ordinance updates.
Tiger?
Yeah, thank you. And to Christine's point, and forgive me, it's been a little while since I've looked at the specific language, but I think that the deed restrictions usually pan out to about 45 years. I think that the mechanism has something to do with like an initial 25 with an option of 20 or a straight 45. I don't quite remember exactly how it works, but it's in that ballpark. Anyway, I was acutely interested in that part of our housing element that says that once this thing gets passed, in the next couple of years, we'll actually have the opportunity to talk about boosting our inclusionary ordinance from 15 to 20, let alone going from a 45-year deed restriction to in perpetuity, which I was inspired by some ABAG conference. I think it was about protecting and preserving and production, and they were talking about how some cities, it might have been San Carlos, have actually figured out, oh, we can do this in perpetuity rather than capping it at 45. So I'm chomping at the bit to have that discussion on the other side of this thing getting passed, personally.
And Mayor, it's an opportune time to do it because the housing element's setting the conditions for many more projects to be subject to the BMR inclusionary zoning ordinance. Historically, we've had lower allowable densities, smaller project sites, and as a result, many projects coming in below the 8-unit minimum. And so it's a great time to consider revisiting that and applying best practices to get the best outcome for our community in such an ordinance update.
Thank you.
So as we go from here to goal setting, there's just so much on your plate, right? That the planning department and hiring consultants, but also work that you all are going to be doing. And I'm really hoping that that'll be brought to us in detail, and in terms of whether we need other staff support and so forth to help in that. But also maybe to talk about some of these and some of the priorities, because I think we are going to be getting some units and, some bigger projects in. And so what's really critical to make sure that we're getting the right kind of housing. I was wrong. I did find the inclusionary ordinance, and yeah, there's some weird, really old stuff. Like it, talks about the priorities in a redevelopment area, which is Rockaway, which is, it's just, yeah.
Which
is
there's no more redevelopment.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you for that.
Do you have additional questions?
I do. I'm just kind of going through them. Sorry. Feel
I'm
free,
ready to
someone
make
else
a
to go
motion.
through.
So,
Oh, you are?
yeah, but go ahead.
Okay, so HEG2, and I'm sorry, I don't have a page number, but it talks about protection from displacement. Oh, maybe it's page 35 of that document. It talks about supporting preservation and affordability of mobile home communities. I just wanted to clarify, is that just the Pacific Skies Estate property on Palmetto, or do we have other mobile home communities that I'm not aware of?
It's just the cottages at Seaside. That was the last name of that mobile home.
Pacific Skies is the new one. Yeah, okay.
Pacific Skies was one of the older.
The cottages is the new name for it.
No, the cottages
They
is old.
changed it?
They changed it again recently. Yeah.
Oh, my
Yeah.
goodness.
So I just want to say that, maybe we've preserved that community, but it's not affordable housing anymore. So, a two-bedroom rents for $3,400 a month. I know someone who just purchased a one-bedroom for $78,000, and then they're paying $2,900 a month. So anyway, I'm not sure that this is a good example of protection from displacement and preserving affordable housing. Just a comment. Oh, and then page 50, item 1 talks about developing an inventory of extremely low income owned and rented units. And one, I wanted to confirm that that was for the whole city, not just the coastal zone, and then just kind of ask how we're planning to do that. And if it's possible to expand it beyond extremely low income to very low income and low income.
This program, HEI-7, is referring to the city's obligation to keep track of these units and try to prevent their conversion or loss to non-lower income housing units. And so I think what we're doing here is trying to specifically beef up the information we have on extremely low income units by making contact to those properties where we believe they may be present, like Casa Pacifica or some of the other senior affordable housing that we have. Otherwise, new extremely low income units will be coming online potentially through new policies and programs in the housing element, and we'll have the opportunity at that time to also track their creation on the city maintained list.
Okay, so we're assuming that we know through deed restrictions or something from that which units are extremely low income now?
I'm suggesting we may not know all of them, and that's part of the outreach process to these operators. We know that they are, in general, lower income units, primarily in our community serving seniors, for example. All of the particular income levels we may not know in every case, and so this is committing to building out that information through inquiry to those operators.
Okay. And then do I have a page number for this? It's HEI 8. So it talks about rehabilitation of homes in lower resource and coastal zone areas. And then number 6 has a coastal housing preservation program. And I'm just wondering why that is only for the coast and not other lower resource areas. And I guess wondering what other lower resource areas are defined as.
Mm-hmm. So the lower resource areas are mapped in the map packet that's part of the housing element. So there are parts of town.
North end of town mostly.
Primarily, right.
Uh-huh.
And then the coastal housing rehabilitation program or preservation program, that's reflecting the analysis of impacts to our housing, reflecting the coastal environment. And so it's just recognizing that those properties closest to the coast are most impacted by the severe weather and the deleterious effects of the salt air and so forth. And so they tend to have more of those maintenance needs than properties farther inland in our community. And so that's where that's coming from. It's the identified impact and trying to put something in place to address it, to preserve those housing units for the long term.
Okay, but from what I remember, and I don't have all this in front of me, but this was also about helping seniors age in place and, making sure people could stay in their homes longer. And I know specifically that's an issue in Westview, and where there are more affordable homes now and people don't have those resources. So I'm just wondering if we can expand that policy beyond the coastal zone to lower resource areas, since that is the category that this discussion is in anyway.
Yeah, 3 and 5. So I think within that program, if you look at items 3 and 5, they essentially address that. So one target group, if you will, are lower income individuals. So those that may not have the means to, proactively maintain their property, trying to connect them with resources, for example. In addition, targeting the coastal areas that are subject to the most severe property maintenance challenges, given their proximity to the shoreline.
And then a few questions about ADUs. Do we currently have a minimum square footage requirement?
So state law requires the city to allow efficiency units, which I believe are as small as 150 square feet. So that's functionally the minimum that the city must allow.
Okay, so that's about the size of a tiny home, so that's permissible as an ADU in our current policy.
Well, I don't want to talk about tiny homes generally,
Right,
but,
okay,
in a unit meeting the criteria.
Square footage-wise.
Square footage-wise, you might equate it to what it's like,
Okay.
to operate in a tiny home.
Yeah, okay, and then, so, and this is on page 46, it talks about monitoring the affordability of ADUs. And how do we do that?
Yeah, it's quite challenging, frankly. What we're contemplating is to partner regionally with 21 Elements and others to put a regional system in place to come up with a common methodology to do that. But at the end of the day, it's going to be less than 100% perfect, just given the challenges. And there's no obligation, for example, for a private property owner who has an ADU to even respond to our requests for that kind of information. So it's a best attempt to learn more about the income levels of the individuals occupying those units.
Yeah, I guess it's troubling because we're counting a lot of our housing and assuming ADUs are more affordable because they're small, but we really have no way of knowing if any of how many of those are rented even or.
Well, the assumptions of the income levels contained in the housing element are based on data of regional surveys of actual income levels from those survey responses received. So it's not completely a guess in terms of what those income levels are. Will Pacifica's experience be exactly the same? Maybe, maybe not. But we do have the available data on ADU income levels in our region, and that was used to inform the income breakdowns assumed for our RENA in the ADU strategy.
And I think there might be a typo on the backup action item. Sorry, I'm trying to find that now. Yeah, so that's on page 46 of the red line, page 36 of the housing element red line. It says, if the actual production and affordability of ADUs is greater than 30% from projected trends at mid-cycle review, blah, 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 then we have to identify additional sites. I think that should be less than. But maybe I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, that's the intention is if it's less than, but if I suppose the way I wrote that sentence, it could be if it was 30% more or 30, that is if the difference is greater than 30%. So if you were actually producing greater than 30%, that would come back. Could be written better.
Okay, I'll let you decide what to do with that. I was confused. Maybe CD will be too. Okay. Just another question about the inclusionary ordinance for a second. So one of the things, as Tiger was mentioning, was looking at increasing from 15 to 20%. But if we did that, would that mean that, so if that's required of all of our projects, that means that everything would be ministerial review then at that point?
Possibly, yes. That's right.
Okay, so that's something we really need to think about, yeah.
19%. 19.
Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you.
I mean, it's a little more qualified than that, but many more sites would be subject to ministerial approval on that characteristic alone. It wouldn't necessarily be every project on every site, but we have a lot of rezoning sites, and those would be subject to that in most cases. And so just thinking about what's the objective of the policies, is it to create affordable housing? That's a strong incentive to create affordable housing when there's a ministerial approval process that is more certain, it's faster, it's less costly. That's a lot of what the housing element is intended to do.
And just one thing that I'll add is that the program where there's a discussion of requiring a minimum of 20%, that's going to be analyzed in the study. So the program is actually, to prepare a study, making recommendations on that. So this is all something that will come back when this program is being implemented.
Got that, thank you.
Okay, and my last comment is cities don't build housing.
Right.
We have to get other people to build housing because we don't do it. So it's just.
And I will comment on moving forward, I think it's going to be very important for us to figure out how we can inventory rentals. And so that's just.
Anyone ready to make a motion?
I'm ready to make a motion, but can you put the slide up, Sarah, with the amendment? Thank you.
Christian, was there additional updated language that we were to incorporate in the motion that doesn't reflect in the staff report?
That's what I just.
Yes,
asked for.
Councilmember Big Stick.
Okay.
Essentially, just to restate what that is, it's renaming program HEI3 to say public instead of school.
I'm just going to say it like it is.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I move to adopt an initial study, Negative Declaration Quality Act, CEQA. B, revise the draft housing element to rename program HEI3 to Master Planning and Implementation for Public Sites. Approve the 2023-2031 housing element of the general plan and incorporate all documents and testimony into the record by reference.
I will second, and through the mayor, if I may make a comment before we vote. I just wanted to take one more opportunity to say thank you, Carol. Thank you, Sabina. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Brianna. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Christian. And thank you, Commissioner Wright. No less, Emily and Sarah and Kevin. So I would just really want to thank everybody. Over, 2 years at least? This has been such a tremendous lift as we're navigating a much bigger picture than just little old us while we're getting into the fine grains. So just thank you, everybody, for working so hard for our community.
And I agree with that.
And I agree with that, too.
Okay, please vote. Oh.
Uh-oh, did I vote on the wrong one?
Let me try that again, so we align with the vote for. Sorry. Okay.
I pushed the wrong button. It was me.
Okay, and with the motion as amended per the staff recommended modified recommendation, motion by Councilmember Beer and seconded by Councilmember Big Stick, the vote passes unanimously.
And it seems like that was a really long meeting, but at 9:41.
What?
9:41, we're going to adjourn, and I'm going to hit the thing.
Yeah. Oh, you
Right.
play your little.
I know, I did.
It's all right. I'm sure this guy is.
Okay.
Oh, right. This is the very dry, isn't it?
No, I was able to talk.